Chapter 1034. Clang. The sound of the sword moving in the water was very pleasing to the ear. Although the shape of the broken crystal blade was unique, it had a very rhythmic arrangement and structure. When it was swung in the air, it could roll up air currents silently, and when it was swung in the water, it could make a pleasant friction sound. With a slash of the sword, the super demonic dragon combat energy of the fire element shone brightly even in the water. It was like a huge flaming knife that slammed into the water dragon, Walter. There was a splashing sound. The scales on Walter's body were instantly split open by the super demonic dragon combat energy, leaving a charred wound. Ewer. At the same time that Walter was angry, he was also terrified. He never thought that List would be able to hurt him in such an environment. Moreover, it seemed that List's strength had not declined. Instead, it had skyrocketed, becoming stronger and more ferocious than in reality. I've said it before, with your young IQ, you won't understand my strength. Walter, stop struggling pointlessly. Holding the broken crystal blade, the smoke turned into a cloak that rippled behind him. List said calmly, I nurtured you from the wreckage, and this is the bond between us that can never be broken. Ewer. Walter's dragon eyes emitted a faint blue light, and he rushed over again, accompanied by a powerful dragon breath. These dragon breaths instantly turned into countless giant sea snakes, entangling List. Compared to the dragon breath in reality, its current dragon breath could be said to be powerful. The countless water snakes danced, and the scene alone was enough to make one's scalp tingle. However, under the smoke-enhanced broken crystal blade, no matter how strong the giant snakes were, they would just be cannon fodder. The flames turned into a sea of fire, quickly burning and evaporating every giant dragon breath snake. They spun and jumped, stirring up a fire tornado in the sea, heading straight for the water dragon, Walter. The battle was hardy. In the end, with his powerful strength, List killed the water dragon. The broken crystal blade was stained with the super demonic dragon's blood, and he announced the victory of this spiritual battle. He took the spiritual battle seriously without the help of the mystical dragon's soul fruit. This was the second time he had won openly, and it was against an elemental dragon, an evil dragon's spiritual world. The next moment, the bubbles in front of him dissipated, and a brand new water dragon was floating in front of him. It lowered its head and nudged List, indicating for List to ride on its dragon Fang platform. As long as he defeated the dragon in the spiritual battle, it would be equivalent to registering his marriage. List put away the shattered crystal blade, smiled slightly, and leaped onto the dragon Fang platform. Then, he instantly completed the spirit as one link and rode the water dragon up from the water. After flying for an unknown period of time, he finally leaped out of the water, creating countless splashes as he flew straight up. The next moment, his vision changed. He was riding on the young water dragon, Wouter, and was flying crookedly in the sky. His vision was not new, and it was similar to a human's vision. Ouch! Walter let out an angry roar. Although it had accepted its fate, it was not satisfied. Don't be impatient. After a while, you will understand how lucky you are to follow me. List touched the scales on its neck. Everything was over. The dragon nest of the small water dragon, Walter, was temporarily arranged in the only sea city of the Fire Kingdom, Mermaid City. It was located near the mouth of the Whirlpool River not far from Estuary City. It was the settlement of the clownfish race and the resting place of the mermaids. It would be opened up into an underwater breeding garden. Most of the elves searched by the mermaids were arranged near Mermaid City. The original marine breeding industry around Black Horse Island was also gradually moving here. For example, the artificial breeding of black giant clams, pink conches, and golden clams had been completely handed over to the clownfish race. Kelp, giant algae, and other marine plants were also cultivated here on a large scale. The giant algae spirit, Parker, had moved from the giant algae forest of Black Horse Island and owned a top-notch luxury insect house in Mermaid City. The handsome Parker likes life here. It would be better if these ugly toadfish could stay away from me. At this time, Parker was lying on a giant algae leaf, looking at the ugly fish swimming around harvesting giant algae. From time to time, he would take a little jade powder from his body and put it in his mouth. Suddenly, he looked at the distant sea. Well, the equally handsome List is here. He hasn't come to see me for a long time. I don't know which fairy has bewitched him. Only the handsome Parker has always loved me. No one in this world will be really good to you except yourself. While muttering to himself, List had rushed over on the small water dragon, Walter. The water dragon existed in a very special way. Its body was like a layer of air attached to it, completely isolated from the sea. He couldn't help but think of the colorful whale Rose he left on Black Horse Island. Rose had a magic called colorful breathing membrane, which was also amazing. List, who was riding Walter, also had a layer of air attached to his body and breathed freely. Moreover, Walter's movements in the water were more agile and faster than when he was flying in the sky. Even the pressure of the deep sea had no effect on him. However, this was to be expected. After all, if mermaids could swim in the sea, how could an even more magical water dragon not be able to? Also, the water dragon's vision was not affected at all in the dark deep sea. It could see a special light to distinguish the underwater world. This was something mermaids could not do. Once it merged with the magic eye, there was no telling what kind of magical changes would happen. Walter stopped at the edge of the new kelp forest that had not yet fully grown. At this time, Parker, who was called by List, had already slowly swam over. He saw Walter. Such a water dragon gave him a very strange shock. In fact, he had seen dragons before. List had let him feel several dragons. However, Parker had no feelings for these dragons. He even felt a little disgusted. He hated the arrogant temperament of dragons. Only I, Parker, am the most handsome. Dragons can't compare at all. But at this moment, Parker realized that he had fallen in love with the little water dragon Walter the first time he laid eyes on it. Oh, my God, List, what did you bring? It's so perfect. Handsome Parker likes it. Parker involuntarily flew over and kept circling around the little water dragon Walter. Walter blew a bubble at Parker, trying to get rid of the sharp-toothed little thing like he was trying to get rid of a fly. Parker was blown a few times, but he quickly swam over and flew up and down. List, I like it. Handsome Parker likes it. I can feel that you like it, Parker. In fact, I brought the little water dragon Walter here to see if you like it. List laughed. This was also his favorite moment. Parker liked Walter, which meant that it was finally on the verge of evolution. Great elves only liked dragons that were compatible with them. Only such dragons could they evolve. Luckily, Parker ran into Walter at that moment. From now on, Fish City will be Walter's dragon nest. Parker, you must get along well with Walter. No one is allowed to bully the other. Handsome Parker will take good care of this little cutie. Don't worry, List. Parker patted his little chest and shouted. What he said made List's face darken. Don't worry, go. The little water dragon, Wouter, was even more irritated and let out a roar. It was very disgusted with this flea-like little thing. I am a noble dragon, damn flea. Please remember this book's original domain name. 9 Heavens Godly Emperor mobile version website. Chapter 1035. Wouter was not satisfied, but since List had already made up his mind and gave him a batch of potions as a reward, he could only accept the fact that he had to keep Parker, the little flea, company. Little cutie, I'll take good care of you. Handsome Parker will like you as much as he likes himself. The giant seaweed elf grinned with a mouth full of sharp teeth. Yo-ho! Wouter glared and tried to intimidate Parker. If it weren't for the elven contract, Parker would be a handsome great elf that even List wouldn't think much of. How would he care about Walter's glare? He happily flew to Wouter's body and caressed his scales, feeling the aura of a water dragon. What a cute water dragon, Wouter. Handsome Parker likes you. Yo-ho. The little water dragon raised its head in anger and despair. In fact, it could not feel Parker's presence at all, the great elf was too small for it. However, when it closed its eyes, its mind was filled with Parker's face, which made it hysterical. Therefore, it could only swallow potions to divert its attention. Yo-ho. It told List, who was watching from the side, that the potion supply must be doubled, or it would rebel. List maintained his smile and ignored the little water dragon. Your Majesty, you are indeed a great human king who is favored by the gods. Is this a water dragon? What a wonderful creature. I can feel the powerful and oppressive supreme magic from it, the mermaid Marquis Wuxia said after rushing over. After all, dragons represent the pinnacle of power. From now on, little water dragon Wouter will use Mermaid City as his dragon nest. Wuxia, I'll leave the design of the dragon nest to you. Rest assured, Your Majesty. It is the fortune of all mermaids to be able to invite a dragon to live in Mermaid City. When feeding little water dragon Wouter, you have to control the clowns. Wouter is different from Marta the mountain copper dragon. It's an evil dragon with a bad temper. I'll control the clowns. Even if they are eaten by Wouter, it's not a big deal. With the source of energy potion, these clowns are producing little fish clowns every day. Its fertility is so strong that it seems to have returned to the sea before it was polluted by the cursed dragon. At that time, it was said that a large number of clowns were organized to fight each other every year to control the number of clowns. Clowns belonged to an intelligent race, but in the eyes of the mermaids, these clowns were a group of lowly slaves that could reproduce. They did not have any dignity that an intelligent race should have. In fact, it was the same for the Nagas. In the eyes of the mermaids, the Nagas were an inferior race. Mermaids were only friendly to humans. They believed that the appearance of humans represented a higher civilization. Judging people by their appearance had always been the hobby of highly intelligent races. At this moment, when he saw the small water dragon, Wuxia's eyes were also dazzled, and he couldn't wait to pounce over and touch it. This made Walter roar again and again. He really wanted to eat this mermaid, thinking that she was a great tonic. He left the little water dragon behind. List also handed over the exploration of the stronghold night to Achi. He did not have any clues at the moment, so he could only hope that Achi could make some discoveries. Subsequently, he rode on the invisible dragon bard and directly tore through the material boundary. He came to the wilderness south of the solid land, which was the original habitat of the aluminum dragon. There was a brass mine here that could not be mined for the time being. Of course, he was not here to mine, nor was he here to join the migration team. Instead, he was going to set off for the fertile land and try to find Nimia the Great Lion. As for the light dragon that was scheduled, he had no plans to ride it for the time being. An adult light dragon was not easy to deal with, and the Grand Duchy of Maple Leaf was located between the Eagle Kingdom and the Iron and Steel Ridge Kingdom. It was easy to be exposed if he went to snatch the light dragon. It was not a good idea to move without being prepared. The light dragon was there, and no one was fighting for it. He could ride it at any time. He ordered the light dragon to guard against assassinations. However, Great Emperor Jupiter knew that if the assassination failed, he would not let it go, according to what Laird Truth said. He would definitely get back at him. However, the King of Shadows was already dead. The magic shooter defected to the Fire Kingdom, and the broken crystal blade that he brought with him became List's sword. The mirror-like equipment that could see through supreme magic naturally fell into List's hands. The mirror was called the Magic Weaving Compass. It could weave the tracks of the surrounding supreme magic onto the compass. It was a very powerful detection artifact, especially effective against dragons. The other equipment that could seal space, the imprisonment light magic staff, had been destroyed. It could be said that great Emperor Jupiter originally sent people to assassinate Liszt with absolute confidence. Now, he had suffered a double loss and even lost his underwear. He would definitely not send people to assassinate Liszt in a short period of time. It was not easy to gather such a luxurious assassination lineup. In short, Liszt was very safe during this period of time. He was invincible in the northeast corner of the legendary continent. As long as he kept a low profile, no one could hurt him. The fertile land still has to fly for more than 1,000 kilometers to the south. I hope Nimia the Great Lion is not hiding in the mud and sleeping during this period. Otherwise, it will not be easy to find it. However, it turned out to be a prophecy. The power of fate did not choose to favor him these few days. After searching for 3 days and 3 nights in the fertile land, he did not find any signs of supreme magic. There were also no signs of high magic. If Nimia the Great Lion did not leave the fertile land, then it must be sleeping in the mud. High-level dragons and creatures like World of Warcraft did not come out to hunt every day. Sometimes, it was common for them to sleep for 10 days or half a month. However, Liszt did not have time to waste here. After searching for 3 days and not finding anything, he directly tore open the material boundary and traveled back to the territory. As soon as he returned to the territory, there was good news. When Achi was preparing to start her research on the stronghold, she unexpectedly developed another special magical result, a magical contract designed according to the awe of the phoenix. This kind of contract was originally proposed by Liszt. He hoped to build a bridge between the night and the World of Warcraft mount. Achi organized a group of great magicians to research this direction. At first, she did not have any expectations, but she unexpectedly received a reward. Brother, this kind of contract has been verified by the night. It can indeed establish a spiritual connection between the night and World of Warcraft. Their souls can be connected through a special frequency. Although the close spiritual connection is a little vague, the night and World of Warcraft can influence each other. Similar to the knight and the elf? It's somewhat similar, but the power of the contract is a little weaker because it is not mandatory. The World of Warcraft must be familiar with the knight before the contract can be established. If the World of Warcraft resists, the contract will be broken. In addition, magicians can also communicate with the World of Warcraft through the contract. Even magicians can do it? Then is it applicable to all World of Warcraft? It must be a World of Warcraft with a certain level of intelligence. If it is an insect-type World of Warcraft with no intelligence, it will be very difficult to form a contract. The knight and insect-type World of Warcraft can't get used to each other. No matter how well you treat insect-type World of Warcraft, you won't be able to exchange feelings for insect-type World of Warcraft, so you won't be able to form a contract. Although it was not applicable to all World of Warcraft. Liszt rubbed his chin and gave full affirmation to this research result. It will have a very wide range of applications. In that case, let's call this contract Beast Taming Contract. With this contract, it won't be difficult for the knight to tame World of Warcraft as his mount. It was very fitting and elegant. Chapter 1037. In the blink of an eye, it was already September. D. Maria Rainflower Stone arrived at the Soul Fortress through the Heart Reed teleportation formation. The Soul Island, where the Soul Fortress was located, had become a bustling port. A large number of ships were docked there, and countless serfs were loading and unloading goods. The products of Blazing Island were sent to Iron and Steel Ridge, Eagle Country and other countries, and foreign resources were also gathered at Blazing Island. However, there were strict quarantine standards for goods going in and out to prevent rats and other spies from sneaking in. What a great miracle, no matter how many times I transmigrate. D. Maria looked at the pitch-black magic door behind him and sighed silently. At the thought of leaving Blazing Island for this mission, he felt a little conflicted. As the former Marquis of Wild Wave, he was born in the Kingdom of Eagle and had once chatted merrily with the Eagle King, Adonis Moonlight Silver. Now that he had been captured, he had sought refuge with the Fire Kingdom and was appointed as the vice-chairman of the development committee. This meant that he had control over the entire kingdom. This feeling was far better than in the past. But now, he was going to Sapphire Duchy in the name of the Fire Kingdom's envoy to discuss with Sapphire Duke Anthony Sapphire about this year's development order. According to last year's rules, the Sapphire Dragon would take the lead and invade the Eagle Kingdom to plunder its population. Currently, the demoted Sapphire Duchy was still a vassal state of the Steel and Iron Ridge Kingdom. With such a title, the expansion order was just like in previous years. Moreover, there was a good excuse to dispatch the Sapphire Dragon. When the Eagle Kingdom launched a dragon-slaying war against the Sapphire Dragon, could it be that the Sapphire Duchy was not allowed to retaliate? However, anyone with a discerning eye would know that the Fire Kingdom was behind this development order. This was List's revenge. King Adonis, I can only say my apologies. The Yuhua Stone family could not obtain the protection of the Eagle Kingdom. For the sake of the family's interests, we could only choose to lean towards the Fire Kingdom. His Majesty List has great talent and bold vision, and his strength is shocking. In the future, the Yuhua Stone family will only become stronger. Putting aside the little bit of guilt in his heart, Di Maria had already adjusted his state of mind when he took the boat to Blue Dragon Island. Right now, he was a knight of the Fire Kingdom. He only served his family, only served the Fire Kingdom. Florence Wind-Chasing Arrow stood in front of the magic gate of Xiongnu Teleportation Magic Circle, waiting with the crowd. Today, the migrating knight from the Grey Iron Duchy had finally trudged over from the endless wilderness and was resting in Realgar City. Piero Grey Iron and the other nobles would cross the teleportation circle today and arrive at Jade Stone City. They would officially join the Fire Kingdom and become the followers of List, the Fire King. The welcoming party was led by Lee William Tulip. This middle-aged noble, who currently only held the title of Marquis, was one of the few top-notch nobles in the Fire Kingdom. He was the father of the king. He had already become a domain knight, an existence second only to the Dragon Knight. There were those who envied Lee William, those who envied him, and those who disdained him. Many people believed that Lee William had been basking in the glory of his son. Otherwise, he would only have been a sword saint and an earl. How could he have had such a glorious moment? However, Lee William did not care about these jealous words at all. If he was so capable, he should have had a powerful son too. Florence glanced at Lee William. He was not jealous or envious. He was about to become a perfect Sky Knight, and he also had the Domain Knight Training Manual. The Grey Iron Duchy and the Eagle Royal family were close friends, so they naturally had the Domain Knight Training Manual. Duke Piero's talent was limited and he could not cultivate, but Florence was full of confidence. In the future, he was destined to become a Domain Knight. With the rise of the Fire Kingdom, he would be conferred the title of Duke if he made great achievements. The rise of a brand new kingdom will inevitably have to compete with the original three kingdoms for resources. I have plenty of opportunities to make contributions. Even if I can't grasp the opportunity to make contributions, I can still inherit my father's title and become a duke. But I hope to become a duke myself. He did not have much work to do on Blazing Island, so he had many opportunities to travel around. What he heard the most here was not the gossip among the nobles, but the discussion of military achievements and the worship of List. At the age of 16, he was still a trainee knight. People called him a loser and he was assigned to the most remote town in the country. However, at the age of 18, List had already become a Sky Knight and a Dragon Knight not long after. Later, he rose to power in the Battle of Dragon Slaying on the Sea. Then, in the Second Battle of Dragon Slaying, as a Holy Dragon Knight, he fought against 5 dragons and 2 Dragon Knights of the Eagle Kingdom alone. He killed a Dragon Knight and took away the Grey Iron Dragon. It shocked the 3 kingdoms. Now, List was only 21 years old, but he had 7 dragons, including the Invisible Dragon, the Fire Dragon, the Light Green Gem Dragon, the Grey Iron Dragon, the Orichalcum Dragon, the Aluminum Dragon, and the Bone Dragon. He did not know that List had also obtained a new water dragon, so he had 8 dragons. In this era, the most legendary and dazzling one was List. Everyone knew that his rise was unstoppable. Therefore, being able to follow behind List meant that they were about to make a fortune, and that great nobles would spring up one after another like bamboo shoots after the rain. My starting point is far higher than His Majesty List. Although I am not blessed by the glory of the night like the Son of Glory, I also have to rely on my own efforts to create a family, instead of inheriting my father's title, just as he was in a trance. Suddenly, he heard someone shouting, "It's coming!" Florence suddenly came back to his senses and looked up at the dark magic door. The deep blue vortex emerged, and then a loud dragon roar came from it. In the next moment, a tall silver-white figure rushed out of the magic door. Under the illumination of the sun, it shone with silver light. It was the aluminum dragon that he had lost in the Battle of Seoul. It had now become one of List's mounts, and had escorted the night migration team all the way to Flame Island. After rushing out of the Xiongyu teleportation array, the aluminum dragon left without looking back, flying into the sky and disappearing. It heard List's call and went to the dragon nest that List was arranging for it. The appearance of the aluminum dragon caused a commotion among the night knights, but it soon calmed down. The knight welcoming the team had seen many dragons. There were quite a lot of dragons on Flame Island, especially the invisible dragon. It appeared very frequently, and its beautiful posture had already convinced everyone. Therefore, everyone was immune to the new aluminum dragon. A moment later, another vortex appeared in the teleportation array, and a team of knights shuttled out. Seeing the familiar flag behind the knight, Florence wanted to go forward to greet them, but he stopped and followed the other knight. He did not want others to know about his relationship with Duke Piero. After all, he had decided to rely on his own efforts to create a new family. His shyness did not affect the whole welcoming ceremony. Lee William had already come forward on his black blood horse, and performed the knight greeting with Duke Piero. "Duke Piero, fellow knight, welcome to Flame Island. On behalf of the King of List, I extend a heartfelt welcome to you. His Majesty has been looking forward to your arrival, and the Flame Kingdom now needs you to join us to create a new era of the kingdom." Chapter 1038. Thank you, Marquis Lee William, for your grand welcome and His Majesty List's concern. Piero Greyiron has yearned for the Fire Kingdom for a long time, and now he has finally set foot on the land of Fire Island. In the days to come, I will dedicate all my and the Greyiron family's loyalty to this land. Now, please let me introduce you to the gentlemen behind me. They were all brave knights of the Greyiron Duchy in the past, loyal and upright. Marquis Mendez, Marquis Greyiron, a perfect Sky Knight, Duke Piero and Marquis Lee William introduced the nobles in front of them to each other. Under the scorching September sun, the nobles chatted enthusiastically. Wild Bumblebee was extremely envious. He also hoped to become a member of a great noble family, but he was only a small follower at the moment. However, this was not important. After coming to the Fire Kingdom, all the nobles would no longer follow Piero Greyiron. They would all follow List Fire. I'm not strong enough yet, but I'm young enough. I've been taking royal jelly produced by my family every day, and it's comparable to magic potions. I can already vaguely feel that I'm about to break through the limits of an Earth Knight. My future is in the sky, and the Bumblebee family will also become a true great noble family. There were actually many nobles like Wild. Every knight who migrated thousands of miles to the Fire Kingdom hoped to make a name for themselves here. List's legendary status was like a flag that attracted ambitious knight. When many countries were first established, this was how they attracted talents. The personal charisma of the monarch guided his followers to overcome all obstacles and cultivate a glorious career. This was because they were not prisoners, but migrated knights. This was why this group of 1 duke, 4 marquises, 17 earls, 38 viscounts, and a large number of baron and lord knight migrated to the Fire Kingdom. They were quickly put in important positions. Other than the fact that their fiefs had to wait until after the country was established, their treatment was no different from before. List did not immediately receive these people. He was busy building the dragon nest for the aluminum dragon. Aluminum dragons didn't have high requirements for their living environment, but they liked shiny silver things. They couldn't fake silver, they had to have the unique luster of metallic silver. Therefore, List built a huge silver-plated dragon nest for the aluminum dragon near the Fire Kingdom. Caverns carved out of the mountains, caverns that aluminum dragons like to live in. At the entrance of the cave, there was a lake. Instead of water, it was filled with mercury. The large amount of mercury mined from the mercury mine in Dragon Valley City had yet to be put to use. In reality, most of the resources would be brought to the Flame Royal City to be stored. This was the private property of the Flame family. During the construction of Monarch City, a large number of warehouses would be built around the Killing Moon Sacred Mountain to store supplies. In the future, when the land surrounding the Fire Kingdom was developed, even the elves would move over. Apart from the Fire Kingdom and a few other major cities, the other cities would be given to the nobles of the Burning Legion. As the direct orders of chivalry of the Fire family, he would have to raise himself in his own fief. Many of the national systems that List designed were borrowed from the Sapphire Principality. The Sapphire clan created the Blue Blood Alliance, and he created the Burning Legion. Of course. Most countries were like this. The knight system itself was a social system that was difficult to define in terms of the form of a country. The nature of a king was not much different from that of a great aristocrat. It was just that the king had a larger territory, more followers, more resources, a more sound management system, and more centralized family power. How about this place? For this silver cavern, I have melted tens of millions of silver coins to arrange such a large area. Roar! The aluminum dragon stood at the entrance of the dragon nest. It first looked down at the mercury lake at the entrance of the cave, then looked at the dragon nest, and gave its opinion, so. It looked beautiful, but it did not have a full silver interior. It was only silver-plated, which did not match its taste. Be content. Do you know that I have melted all the silver coins I have plundered? Fortunately, the Fire Kingdom has not yet begun to be in theft and can be bartered. Otherwise, the lack of silver coins would directly lead to the collapse of the monetary system. In the future, I will buy more silver coins and recast the dragon nest for you. Roar! The aluminum dragon reluctantly agreed. At this time, List touched its scales and said, "Now that you have lived in a new dragon nest, you should have a new name. I have prepared it for you. Let's call you Connor." Connor, an ordinary name. Roar! The aluminum dragon had no interest in the name, so it reluctantly accepted it and did not ask what Connor represented. Even if it asked, List would not say, because it was a memory from another world. There was a movie called Terminator, in which the main character was the human leader John Connor, who fought against the Terminator robot. The villain in the sequel, the T-1000, was an infiltration-type Terminator, also known as a liquid robot. And it just so happened that when the aluminum dragon was fully mature, it could also be liquefied. It was not good to call it the aluminum dragon T-1000, so List simply called it Connor. Before the aluminum dragon could familiarize itself with its dragon nest, a loud dragon roar suddenly came. It was the bronze dragon Marta flying over. Its dragon nest was not far from the aluminum dragon's dragon nest. Roar! The aluminum dragon Connor felt the aura of the bronze dragon Marta, and suddenly its scales stood on end. It stood at the entrance of the dragon nest, staring fiercely at the sky. Facing the direction of the sun, the bronze dragon Marta, whose body was emitting golden light, came to the aluminum dragon's dragon nest in a domineering manner. Its body was strong, and its golden luster was dazzling. Connor's body was slender, and its scales were grayish-white without much luster. In comparison, the aluminum dragon suddenly looked like an ordinary beast, not as noble and gorgeous as the bronze dragon. Roar! Roar! The two dragons stared at each other, not giving way to each other, and both got into an attacking posture. Seeing this, List sighed. This was the disadvantage of having too many dragons. They would have a very strong competitive mentality. It would be better if it was a different knight riding a dragon, but the key was that they were all List's dragons. Neither of them liked their knight to establish a close relationship with other dragons. Marta, go back to your dragon nest. List was a very controlling person, and he did not like his dragons overstepping their boundaries. If you don't go back, your treatment will be downgraded. You're a smart dragon, you should know what choice is best for you. The bronze dragon squinted at List. It turned its head. Roar. It roared at the aluminum dragon, then flew up leisurely, returning to its dragon nest. In fact, it was only here to declare its position. As a powerful magic metal dragon, the Fire Kingdom was its territory. New brother, be smart. How restless. After driving away the bronze dragon Marta and appeasing the aluminum dragon Connor, List finally breathed a sigh of relief and prepared to head to Jade City to host a banquet for the newly arrived Piero and the others. Chapter 1039. At the banquet, the atmosphere was joyous and harmonious. List and Duke Piero sat together, surrounded by Lee William Tulip, Di Maria, Emily, and other higher-ups of the Fire Kingdom. I promised my followers that I would establish a kingdom within 3 years. It's already the 2nd year. Sapphire calendar year 156 is about to pass, and at the beginning of year 158, the Fire Kingdom will be officially established. Therefore, you need to work on Blazing Island for the next year and a half. I understand, Your Majesty. Which city will the Greysteel family stay in? Piero asked. We'll build a new city in the middle of Blazing Island, on a piece of fertile land near the sea. The sea there is mostly shallow, and it's very suitable for the development of aquaculture. Your Majesty, you want to farm in the sea? Piero was confused. List smiled mysteriously. Duke Piero, it seems that you don't know much about the Fire Kingdom. The Fire Kingdom is blessed by the Knight's glory, and even the surrounding Shell Sea is blessed by the Knight's glory. I have 7 mermaids as my followers, and a large number of ugly fish slaves. Mermaids? Piero was shocked. Seeing Piero's expression, Lee William, who was sipping his wine, felt inexplicably refreshed. This was probably the expression he had when he heard that List had become a Sky Knight, become a Dragon Rider, and become a magic shooter. But on second thought, he suddenly became angry. Suddenly, he became angry. He admired Piero's expression and felt very good. Then, did List also admire his expression at that time? Glancing at List, who was bragging to Piero about how mermaids followed him, Lee William shook his head inwardly, consoling himself that he was just overthinking things. After all, he was his son. How could he have the bad taste of watching his father make a fool of himself? After consoling himself, Lee William quickly adjusted his state of mind and began admiring Piero, as well as the other nobles at the banquet. Do mermaids really exist? They used to rule the sea and get along well with humans? They actually accepted Your Majesty's title and became Marquises of the Sea? This is unbelievable. I really want to go to the seaside and see the mermaids. There's actually a race called ugly fish, they're cheap labor. Your Majesty, you're the ruler of the sky, land, and sea. This land is full of legends. Your Majesty, you're a legend destined to shock the entire legendary continent, and Her Highness Emily is also an incredible legend. The praises were endless. At this moment, a greater noble from the Grey Iron Duchy asked curiously, Emily has no family name? Family name. It was the symbol of civilization. Nobles all had their own surnames, except for the Emperor of the Empire. Surnames were no longer worthy of the Emperor's glory. In many countries, even serfs had their own surnames, such as the Sapphire Duchy. However, it was very unreasonable for nobles, especially great nobles, to not have a surname, which was why this great noble asked out of curiosity. Emily's face was still young and immature. After all, she was only 15 years old. However, her long experience had made her mature. She replied calmly, "Emily is your Majesty's spear and shield. I will follow your Majesty for the rest of my life. It doesn't matter if I have a surname or not." The conversation should have ended at this point, but this great noble's brain was a little stubborn, and he actually asked, "Your Highness, are you not planning to start a family?" "Why do I have to start a family?" In Emily's eyes, the glory and inheritance of nobles are far inferior to the glory of His Majesty. Emily said seriously, "Being loyal to His Majesty is Emily's greatest wish, and I will fight for it for the rest of my life. In the future, you will understand how lucky it is to follow His Majesty." Emily's words were a little mushy, making Liszt feel a little embarrassed. However, he understood that Emily really thought so. The more he understood, the more embarrassed he felt. However, after peeling off this layer of embarrassment, it was extremely satisfying. This was the reason why he liked to cultivate young followers. Ahem. On the surface, he still had to keep a low profile. Emily is my most outstanding follower, and also my most gratifying student. The Fire Kingdom started from nothing, and many knights climbed up from the bottom. No matter if they are serfs or nobles, they all have a way to rise here, and it can be seen everywhere. He raised his wine glass, and raised it. Recently, many people have been saying that it is my glory that has brought the Fire Kingdom to life. And I hope, no matter if it is my glory, or the glory of a knight, it will be able to bless everyone standing on this land. Everyone raised their glasses, and Gort, who was in charge of adjusting the atmosphere, took the opportunity to shout, "To the glory of His Majesty! To the glory of His Majesty! To the glory of His Majesty!" Whether it was voluntary or not, everyone followed Gort's lead, and started to shout this slogan. Liszt wanted to smile, and he was more and more satisfied with Gort. He drained the wine in his glass in one gulp, and then put down the glass, indicating for everyone to quiet down. He made a gesture that successful people and leaders like to do, pointing his index finger upwards, and shaking it slightly. "It is fate that has guided us to gather here. Everyone, do not be anxious. Sapphire calendar year 158 is the first year of the Fire calendar, and the Fire Kingdom is with you. Land, population, resources, elves, status, power, whatever you want, I can give it to you." After a pause, his tone became more and more sonorous, "And now, all of you, what you need to do is to offer me loyalty, courage, and integrity." It was Gort again. He was always able to stand up at the most appropriate moment. "Your Majesty, Gort Mast offers you all my loyalty, courage, and integrity." Thus, the nobles who were a beat slower also stood up, shouting to offer their loyalty, courage, and integrity. Emily, Piero, Di Maria, and the other great nobles did the same. Only when Lee William was about to stand up, Liszt pulled him back. "Father, you only need to be proud of your son." Lee William was greatly comforted. "Of course I am proud of you, Liszt Flame, my son. On the day you were born, the entire forest of Coral Island was calling your name. I proudly watched you grow up day by day, becoming the embodiment of justice." Liszt smiled and said, "I understand, Father. When I am crowned king, I will rule this country with wisdom and power, and I will also cautiously use my formidable power. I will inspire the hearts of the people and lead the knight to true victory." Chapter 1040. The big dragon is dead is not in good condition. Please wait a moment. After the content has been updated, please refresh the page to get the latest update. Chapter 1041. The father and son looked at each other and smiled. There was no need to say anything. This banquet was a joyous one for both the host and the guests. The next day, Liszt arranged for Duke Piero to be the third vice-chairman of the development committee. The rest of the matters were left to his father. In the past, he was reluctant to let go of power and liked to experience authority at work. However, after getting used to it for a while, he no longer wanted to be tied down by mundane tasks every day. Fortunately, he had a few blood relatives, especially his father, Lee William, who he could entrust to him. It was good to be a hands-off boss. With the hope of eternal life, Liszt's desire to start a family had faded. Even if he did not master the skills of the Dragon Lord, the Phoenix incarnation had given him a lifespan of at least a few hundred years. He had established a kingdom in a few years. It was unimaginable what kind of realm he would reach after a few hundred years. I have to work harder now and help Chi figure out the Stronghold Knight's cultivation system. When I become a Stronghold Knight that surpasses the Dragon Knight realm, the entire legendary continent will be under my control. At least according to Laird Truth, there is no one stronger than the Dragon Knight in the Noble Frost Empire. The Noble Frost Empire did not have a Stronghold Knight. Obviously, the Unsetting Radiance Empire and the Blue Dragon Empire did not have a Stronghold Knight. Otherwise, the tripod would have been broken long ago. However, it was not easy to figure out the Stronghold Knight's cultivation system. Chi had been working in the Wizard Tower for a long time, but she still could not understand the nature of the stronghold. Brother, it's difficult to explore the stronghold using ordinary methods. We can only rely on Bard's adult strength to spy on the Weave Dragon and find clues about the stronghold from it. Chi announced helplessly in mid-September that there was no progress in the research on the stronghold. Liszt comforted her. Don't worry, Chi. Observing the Weave Dragon is the worst plan. If we alarm the Weave Dragon, it will be hard to imagine the consequences. We can only make a decision when we have no other choice. Why don't you put down your stronghold research and go out to enjoy the scenery? Chi is not tired at all. I ride Charlie to the beach every evening. Then I'll change my research job and find some inspiration. Yep. Chi has a lot of research at hand. Emerald Dragon Leg, Mystic Dragon Soul Fruit, Golden Apple Wood, Bloodline Fruit, Pitch Black Ring, Equivalence Alchemy. Chi has been wanting to research alchemy recently. I've already given Laird Truth the relevant data on equivalence alchemy. He's checking the exchange rates between all metals. The magic shooter who immersed himself in compiling the encyclopedia and summarized his knowledge into the research topics of Laird Truth's life. After contributing the Laird research project to Chi, his knowledge was acknowledged by Chi, and he was allowed to participate in some of the experiments. She handed over the data to Ryder, who would lead the magicians to research it himself. Right now, Chi was like the boss of a laboratory, while people like Laird were the boss subordinates. Ordinary magicians were the research dogs, while the great magicians were the leaders of the research dogs. The hierarchy was clear, and the division of labor was clear. Some people had to work, while others had to work. In October, there was a rapid breakthrough in the research on alchemy. With reference to the ability of the Pitch Black Ring, under the supervision of Chi, a brand new alchemy magic array was set up in the laboratory and successfully refined a ton of iron into a pound of mithril. The ratio was about 2,350 to 1. An equivalent exchange of 2,350 to 1. If I set up a magic array to replace the effect of the Pitch Black Ring, and take into account the manpower of the magicians, the ratio might increase to 2,470 to 1. Laird calculated in his notebook and drew out a table of the equivalents. Liszt raised his eyebrows. Even if it's worth 2,500 to 1, it's still a very profitable business. Now that the territory is no longer short of iron, it's completely possible to refine some of the iron into mithril. Mithril played an important role in knight equipment, especially in a predatory war like the Pioneering Order. The light mithril armor allowed a knight to come and go like the wind. Snatching and running had always been the most adept skill of knight at sea. Your Majesty, the equivalence ratio of iron to mithril is not the most cost-effective. The most cost-effective is copper to adamantine. After calculating the wear and tear, the equivalence ratio can reach 2310 to 1. The smaller the ratio, the greater the amount of magic metal that could be refined from ordinary metals. This is also possible. The importance of adamantine is self-evident, and there is no shortage of bronze. We have to develop this alchemy. Liszt immediately decided to get both mithril and adamantine. As for orichalcum, there was no need for orichalcum. The orichalcum dragon Marta was lying in the Fire Kingdom and could produce orichalcum at any time. He then asked, what is the equivalence ratio of ordinary metals to gold and silver? Gold and silver were the common currencies in the legendary continent. If the equivalence ratio was good, gold and silver could be produced in large quantities. This way, the Fire Kingdom would never lack money again. The equivalence ratio of iron to gold is 1850 to 1. The equivalence ratio of iron to silver is 1430 to 1. The equivalence ratio of copper to gold is 1260 to 1. The equivalence ratio of copper to silver is 870 to 1. The equivalence ratio of silver is not much different from that of gold. However, gold is much more valuable than silver. It is not cost-effective to exchange iron and copper for silver. It is all right to exchange for gold, but the process of alchemy is complicated. It is more cost-effective to exchange iron and copper for magic metal. After a little calculation, Liszt figured out the profit. 1 gold coin was equivalent to 100 silver coins, which was equivalent to 10,000 copper coins. Calculating from the gold content and other aspects, the value of gold to copper was about 1,2500. The effect of alchemy was 1,1260. The effect of alchemy was about to turn 1 gold coin into 2 gold coins. The effect was not as fast as doing business. It was obviously not cost-effective. The exchange ratio of silver was even more exaggerated. Not only would there be no profit, but there would also be a serious loss. In conclusion, it was still better to use iron, copper, and other metals to alchemy for magic metal to make a lot of money. It was no wonder that alchemy was the favorite topic of all mages. Almost all mages would choose to study alchemy after they had some achievements. With alchemy, they would no longer be short of money. They would have the money to conduct more experiments and explore more truths. Alchemy will be the top secret of the Fire Kingdom. Other than a Qi, the technology of the alchemy magic circle can only be controlled by the 3 mages, Laird, Chris, and Kenley. If it is leaked, I will hold you responsible, Liszt announced solemnly after looking at the results of the alchemy. The alchemy magic circle was classified as an official technology and was prohibited from private use. This undoubtedly affected the enthusiasm of the 3 mages. So, in order to motivate the 3 of them to take charge of the alchemy magic circle, he announced again, the alchemy magic circle needs to be carried out immediately. No matter who takes charge of the alchemy magic circle, you will be able to get 10% of the net profit for your private magic experiments and research. With that said, Chris was fine. She rarely engaged in magic research and mainly focused on administration. Money was of no use to her. Laird and Kenley's eyes lit up. They were true believers of the truth. With money, they could do whatever they wanted. There was no need to apply for research funds from the Guild of Magic. Your Majesty, please rest assured. As long as there is time, I will be happy to take charge of the alchemy magic circle. Chapter 1042. I'm becoming more and more reliant on magic. I don't know if this is good or bad. The weave is shrinking, and the weave dragon is sleeping. I feel that things aren't that simple. The reform of mages has to be accelerated, and the profession of mages should be diluted as much as possible. When it came to preventing the revival of mages, Liszt shared the same mentality as all the nobles. They could rely on mages to create equipment, but they must never be allowed to affect the knight system. Perhaps in the knight's mind, the ancient Moon Empire was indeed the symbol of the pinnacle of civilization. Every little bit of success had to be attributed to the Moon Empire. But when it came to themselves, a second Moon Empire must not be allowed to appear. That was a taboo. The great could be worshipped in temples. But they must not exist in reality. If there were any signs, they would be attacked. The appearance of the alchemy spell formation was the second piece of advanced magic technology that the Fire Kingdom grasped after the teleportation spell formation. List loved it but was wary of it. It was classified as a national secret, and he must not allow any leakage. Without the guidance of a magic shooter, the outside world could not replicate this technology. Brother, when Achi was thoroughly researching alchemy, she had new inspiration for the stronghold. I'll go back and think about this problem now. After throwing the alchemy research topic away, Achi busied herself with thinking about the stronghold. Sigh, this is clearly my cultivation system, but in the end, it all depends on Achi's research. It's hard to imagine how many detours I would have had to take to develop to this height if I hadn't met Achi. List sighed inwardly, but there was nothing he could do. Research was really not his forte. Without the blessing of the power of fate, he was actually just an ordinary person. If he was really talented and had amazing talent, he would have made a name for himself on Earth long ago. He would not have worked overtime like a dog, and then suddenly died and transmigrated. So he was very self-aware. He could usually brag and pretend, but he had to recognize his own strengths and weaknesses at critical times. He played to his strengths and avoided his weaknesses. Achi was a research-type talent, responsible for solving technical problems. He was a battle-type talent, responsible for charging and breaking through enemy lines, and achieving achievements. They complemented each other. In Fire Castle, the old butler Carter softly interrupted List, who was sitting in front of the piano and thinking, "Master, Marquis de Maria requests a report. Tell him to wait in the study." "Yes, master." "Oh, by the way, Mr. Carter, tell Mrs. Morrison to stop her work on Banpo milk tea. After drinking so many milk teas with new tastes, I still prefer the original taste." "As you wish, master." Carter bowed slightly and left the piano room. List's fingers stroked the piano, but he had no interest in playing. Speaking of which, he hadn't touched the piano for a long time. There were too many dragons and elves at home, and he couldn't split himself. His piano-playing skills were very rusty, and he no longer had the elegance of a piano king. But the piano pieces he had composed were becoming more and more widespread. Not only did the noble young ladies of the Fire Kingdom fantasize about List every time they played To Alice, City in the Sky, Swan of St. Saëns, and other piano pieces. In the three big kingdoms in the northeast corner of the legendary continent, many noble ladies and young ladies also fantasized about different images of List. Some noble ladies felt that List was a romantic and passionate person. Otherwise, how could he compose such delicate and gentle pieces? Some noble ladies felt that List was a powerful and strong man with amazing stamina. Only such an identity was worthy of the identity of the Dragon Knight who had founded the great foundation of the Fire Kingdom. Some young ladies felt that List was a killing beast. He had even killed 2 of the Dragon Knight. How many ordinary knight had died in his hands? How could such a person not be a beast? But in the dead of night, the young ladies often fantasized about the charming scene of a beauty and a beast. In the hearts of most knight, List represented a legend that was enough to be the idol of everyone in the era of the knight. Now, almost all the knight in the three big kingdoms used List as the model for the protagonist. If the protagonist only rode a dragon, he would be scolded until he doubted his own life. In the past, it was cool for the protagonist to go out and meet elves. Now, the protagonist had to go out and meet a dragon to be cool. There were even smart writers who wrote many books such as List, The Legendary Adventures of the Flame, List, The Detailed Explanation of the Process of Riding the Flame Dragon, List, The Unspeakable Story of the Flame Dragon, List, The Flame and Acheroids, The Unspeakable Story of the Truth, and so on. These books were all successfully sold out and were printed one edition after another. Almost all of those young knights would carry a book about Liszt with them to constantly motivate themselves to become the next Liszt, the Flame. Liszt's glory had transcended the borders. The young knight of the Eagle Kingdom also worshipped him. This was indeed very touching. So when he met D. Maria Rainflower Stone in the study, he could see that on the bookshelf behind him, there was a pile of knight novels with the words, Liszt Flame, written on them. When he was bored, he would read them. He felt that it was quite interesting, especially some nude novels. Your Majesty, this year's expansion order has been prepared. The Sapphire Duchy's orders of chivalry have been assembled. The Sapphire Duchy will be led by the Marquis of Golden Island, Roderick Golden Wheat. The Sapphire Duke will personally lead the Sapphire Dragon. What about at home? It has been decided that I will be the Commander-in-Chief. Count Geoffrey Hibiscus and Count Paris will be the Deputy Commander-in-Chief. 10,000 Earth Knights have been assembled. Among them are 1 Perfection Sky Knight, 8 Sacred Swordsman Sky Knights, and 21 Ordinary Sky Knights. Have you decided on the specific time of the expedition and the location of the attack? The time of the expedition is set for October 3rd. There are 2 choices for the location of the expedition. One is the Sardinia Bay on the northern coastline of the Eagle Kingdom, and the other is the lush promenade on the southern coastline. The final decision will be made when the time comes to assemble and set off from the Iron Hoof Island, Oxhoof City. This was to prevent the news from leaking and to let the Eagle Kingdom take precautions in advance. Every time the Sapphire Duchy issued an expansion order, the specific location of the attack would be decided after going out to sea. Liszt nodded. Proceed according to your decision. I will secretly protect the orders of chivalry with Marquis Emily from the Dragon Knight's attack. Then I will go and preside over the expansion order. Go. While the Fire Kingdom was assembling the orders of chivalry, the autumn wind rolled up the fallen leaves on the vast coastline of the Eagle Kingdom. All the aristocrats, big and small, began to get nervous. It's the season of the Sapphire Fly's expansion order again. An aristocrat at the banquet suddenly sighed, I wonder which egg the Sapphire Fly will bite this year. With the appetite of the Sapphire Fly last year, if it really comes here, I'm afraid that everyone present here will suffer. What are you afraid of? If the Sapphire Fly comes, we will leave the castle and hide in the countryside. If the castle wants to plunder, then plunder. Anyway, I don't rely on farming to make a living. Humph, who doesn't know that the Wild Dog Mercenary Group is your property? Last time, they plundered a small town in my territory and didn't follow the rules to capture serfs. I didn't even bother with you for that. What evidence do you have that the Wild Dog Mercenary Group plundered? I naturally have a rat planted in the Wild Dog Mercenary Group. Then you should properly interrogate this rat to see if he is competent or not. Okay, stop quarreling. Let's think about how to pass this year's expansion order. Unlike in previous years, the legendary Dragon Knight is the master behind the expansion order. At the mention of the legendary Dragon Knight, several aristocrats present suddenly quieted down. After a good while of silence, a drunken aristocrat broke the silence. If this year's expansion order comes to us, then we might as well not resist and join the Fire Kingdom together. Don't those smugglers advertise the welfare of the Fire Kingdom every day? Maybe we can also fight for glory. Chapter 1043. War was cruel, but this year's development made the war seem a little too smooth. When the knights attacked the dense corridor, most of the lords of the Eagle Kingdom who were attacked either closed the gates of their castles in advance and hid in the countryside, or directly opened the city gates to welcome the arrival of the king's army and became a part of the invaders. Some lords had even packed all the resources in their castles and were waiting for the arrival of the orders of chivalry. Then, they would board large ships and set off for the Fire Kingdom. Some lords could not bear to abandon too many resources, and even arranged for the serfs to follow the knight team. There were not many scenes of battle that required a charge. List was hiding at the material border. Seeing this scene, he could not help but sigh. It seems that the Eagle Kingdom has basically given up on the hinterland along the coast, and these lords have also given up. Since the Eagle Kingdom is so generous, I will let the knight work harder and plunder through the lush corridor, and then go to the Gulf of Aden. Adonis Moonlight Silver and his knight could not protect this land and his people. As a result, mercenary groups ran amok, serfs were sold wantonly, and civilians lived precarious lives. List replaced him and moved all the civilians here to Flame Island. Let them start a new life on the blazing island, no longer having to worry about the mercenaries' invasion, and no longer having to worry about the insecurity of life. As a lord, List might not have outstanding ideas such as equality for all, but he always adhered to one principle. That was to protect his people, to eat well, to wear warm clothes, and not to be killed at will. Even if they were his followers' subjects, he would interfere to ensure the basic safety of these people. This was his bottom line, and the kindness in his heart. Emily, what do you think of this development order? He found the light green gemstone dragon knight, Emily, who was resting at the top of a mountain. List had barred descend in front of her and asked, "Your Majesty." Emily bowed and then replied, "There is almost no resistance. This is the glory of your Majesty. All the feudal lords in the lush corridor can be plundered and taken away. For the development of the Fire Kingdom, there is no need to be gentle like the Grand Duchy of Sapphire. If we plunder too much, this fertile land will no longer be cultivated by the nobles. The Eagle Kingdom has 4 prosperous coastlines: Sardine Bay, Yellow Mud Coast, Roaring Estuary, and Lush Corridor. Once a year, we can plunder for 4 years. After 4 years, the Fire Kingdom will be strong enough, and the land will have been cultivated. We can be completely self-sufficient. You're right, but I'm planning to plunder Lush Promenade and Sardinia Bay this year. I'm going to plunder both of them." List always complained that the construction was too slow. Plundering 2 territories a year can last for 2 years. In addition to the other territories along the coastline, it won't be a problem to maintain 3 development orders. Even if we can't plunder the coast of the Eagle Kingdom, Sir Achilles can also plunder the hinterland of the Eagle Kingdom with the teleportation magic circle. List had never thought of opening a teleportation circle directly to the hinterland of the Eagle Kingdom. The construction cost of the teleportation circle is too high. I heard that His Excellency Achilles is currently improving the teleportation circle. With His Excellency Achilles' great knowledge and magic, 3 years should be enough for him to build a regular teleportation circle. He can even design a magic door that can be temporarily opened. Emily was very respectful towards Achi. Emily was very respectful of Achi and thought that Achi was almost omnipotent. Maybe. List put his hands behind his back and looked at the migrating night team in the distance. His voice was calm and powerful. "I don't like war, even though I am always the winner of war." Emily's eyes lit up as she watched his back. Invisible Dragon Bard took out a handful of smoke grass and chewed it slowly. Light Emerald Dragon Ethan twisted his head in disdain. "Mom, where are we going?" On the simple wooden carriage, the little boy, who was only a few years old, huddled tightly in his mother's arms and asked in a low voice. His mother squeezed at the edge of the carriage and tightly grasped the handrail to protect herself and her son. "We are going somewhere far away. Sir Lord will take us to a better place to live." The little boy did not understand what a better place was, but he did not continue to ask. Instead, he looked out of the carriage through a small gap under his mother's armpit. This was a carriage team that stretched for more than 10 kilometers. Walking on the dirt road, a squad of knight could be seen patrolling around the carriage team to prevent it from being attacked by mercenary corps on the way. Along the way, they had already encountered several mercenary corps that tried in vain to plunder the carriages and seize serfs. Especially when the team stopped to make a fire to cook, they could always see the squad of knight nervously searching every part of the forest in search of mercenary corps that might be lying in ambush. The little boy peeked at the knight on the tall horse. When the knight's eyes swept over the carriage, he immediately buried his head in his mother's arms. After waiting for a while, he stealthily raised his head and peeked again at the distant knight through the gap. The silver-white armor and the gleaming knight's lance were deeply engraved in his young mind. As well as leaving a superficial impression, knight, to protect himself and his mother. After a month-long trek, the team finally arrived at the sea. The little boy and his mother saw a large number of ships anchored in the harbor. They had never seen such large ships before. Each one of them was like a castle suspended in the sea. A black flag fluttered high on the mast of the large ships. The flag was embroidered with burning flames. The flames formed a huge fire dragon pattern, fire dragon merchant ship. This was the Fire Kingdom's new three-masted cargo ship. It used a combination of horizontal and longitudinal sails for braking. Its characteristic could only be described in one word: big. In order to transport these knight and serfs, Liszt no longer cared about concealment. He directly drove all the large ships that the Fire Kingdom had madly built over the past few years. Except for the Fire Dragon merchant ship. There was also a slender ship with a black flag hanging on the mast. However, the flag was no longer embroidered with burning flames. Instead, it was embroidered with white metal fragments. The fragments formed a huge iron dragon pattern, Iron Dragon warship. A three-masted ship that stood side by side with the Fire Dragon merchant ship. It was mainly used to transport the knight on expeditions. It was very mobile. By the sea. The serfs lined up under the knight's organization and boarded the Fire Dragon merchant ship one after another. On board, the sailors distributed a small pill, seasickness medicine, to the serfs. This was a new drug developed by the Guild of Magic. Not only was there a seasickness medicine, but there were also some other drugs. In terms of drug research, Liszt was very generous. These drugs were basically not needed by the knight class, but the commoners were very dependent on them. Another lord would never invest in drugs to treat serfs. Only Liszt insisted. "Mother, where are we going?" The little boy asked his mother in a low voice. Coming to the seaside and boarding the ship, everything made him curious and afraid. Without waiting for his mother to answer, a young man who looked like a mage and also like a noble came over. The young man smiled and said in wind language, "Little guy, the place we are going to is called the Fire Kingdom. From today onwards, you and your mother will become the subjects of the great Liszt, King of the Fire Kingdom. There will be no war, no harm. As long as you work hard, you will be able to eat your fill." After saying that, the young man then turned to the surrounding serfs and said loudly, "I'm Donnie Truth, the medical arcanist on board. If you feel uncomfortable, I'll help you heal and ensure that everyone can arrive at the Fire Kingdom in good health." Chapter 1044. The current sailing technology was different from when Liszt first came to this world. With the development of shipbuilding technology after he made his fortune, under the guidance of the creative wizard Inuit Truth, the hybrid sailboat had successfully replaced the square-sail sailboat. Therefore, it only took 5 days to reach the island of Souls, which used to take 7 to 8 days to reach the island. There was a specially developed medicine for seasickness, and there were medical arcanists on board. Almost none of the migrating serfs lost their lives during the voyage. It was a novel experience of sailing on the sea. From afar, they could see the towering Soul Fortress on the island of Souls. It was a towering white castle with a flaming flag fluttering in the wind. The castle did not have many special features. Because the island of Souls was very small, the castle appeared more slender, like a wizard tower. Of course, it also had the function of a tower. This Soul Fortress was also the only lighthouse on the island of Souls. The crystal lamp on the top of the tower was brightly lit day and night. It guided the direction of all the ships. Everyone line up. Women and children disembark first. Follow the knight leading the team. Don't get separated. The island of Souls has strict security. Anyone who dares to stray will be shot by the patrols. The knight on the ship shouted, directing the thousands of people to disembark in an orderly manner. You're hanging on to my baggage. I dropped my shoe. Don't push me. What a lively place. Is this where we're going to live? It's a magic gate. That's a magic gate. I heard the captain say that it's the Island of Souls magic gate. I heard that too. Passing through the magic gate is the Kingdom of Flames. A great kingdom without hunger or mercenaries. The little boy held his mother's hand tightly and squeezed in the line. His ears were filled with the chatter of the serfs and the loud scolding of the knight. After walking through the long line, he arrived in front of the magic gate of the Island of Souls. A dark blue vortex slowly rotated on his back. It was like a giant beast that was choosing its prey. Many people could be seen lining up to enter the mouth of the giant beast and then disappear. I don't want to go in, I don't want to go in. One could even hear a serf who was too afraid to enter the magic gate, but was still dragged and thrown into the magic gate by the knight. Liszt hoped that the knight would treat the serfs well. However, it was impossible for the knight to be gentle towards the serfs, it was normal for them to be rude. Mom, I'm scared. The little boy shook his mother's hand. Don't be afraid, that's a magic door. What's a magic door? It's a magic door, a magical magic. Hold Mummy's hand and don't let go. We'll be able to reach our new home after walking through it. His mother also didn't know what a magic gate was. Although a knight had explained it to them on the ship, the serf's limited understanding was unable to understand what it meant to travel through space. Of course, it was not necessary to know the specific principles. It was enough to know that this was magic. Ordinary people were always full of reverence for magic and thought that it was omnipotent. When the team arrived at the magic gate, they heard a knight reading out the things to take note of, including the instructions for traveling through the magic gate, the Fire Kingdom's prohibitions, and so on. However, in the face of the mysterious and terrifying magic gate, few serfs listened carefully. They were either eager to try, or on tenterhooks. They took the initiative or were pushed into the behemoth-like blue vortex. Boom! Jim, close your eyes and hold Mummy's hand tightly. Okay. The little boy Jim closed his eyes, grabbed his mother's hand with both hands, and was pushed into the magic gate by the crowd. The next moment, a wonderful feeling of weightlessness hit him, and he was so scared that he almost cried. Fortunately, his mother's hand was always there, making him feel safer little by little. At this time, he couldn't help but think of the wizard named Donny Truth, who always boasted about how magical and great the magic gate was. He said that it was jointly built by His Majesty the Great King Liszt Tulip and the great magic scholar A. Royds Truth. It was the most magical embodiment of magic in the secular world, a symbol of the truth being conquered by humans. Of course, the little boy Jim didn't understand the above boasting. He just remembered that the magic gate was great and wanted to take a peek. So he cautiously opened his eyes and saw darkness, with occasional lightning-like flashes of light around him. Before he could see clearly, his body tilted, and he had already walked out of the magic transmission array. He fell to the ground and rolled around with his mother and other serfs. When he was helped up by his mother, his eyes suddenly opened up. He saw a city with densely packed buildings, with no end in sight. There were tall castles around the city, and beautiful roads connected to each other. There was also a wizard tower towering into the clouds, as if it was a bridge between heaven and earth. There were also huge birds flying in the sky, and a knight could be vaguely seen on the back of the bird. Don't be in a daze, hurry up, follow the team forward, don't block the magic gate. Hurry up and follow, come here. Keep up, don't pick up your shoes again if you lose them, someone will give you new daily necessities later. Gather, calm down, gather. Stand tight, don't block the roadside, gather in this open space. Before the serfs could sigh with emotion at the prosperous world they saw, they were shouted at by the trainee knight on horseback to gather in the open space beside the road. Almost all of them gathered in a small group of 300 to 500 people. They were strictly restricted from walking and talking in private, so they could only wait anxiously. A moment later, a middle-aged man dressed as an official rushed over on horseback with his assistants. With an impatient smile on his face, he said in broken wind language, "Hello, people from afar, I am a receptionist of the Reed City Surf Reception Committee. My name is White ***, you can call me Sir White ***. In the next few days, I will arrange for your clothing, food, housing, and transportation." Sir White *** paused and continued, "Now, I will read to you a letter from the Master of the Sea, the Lord of all the islands, the Great Holy Dragon, Invisible Dragon Knight, Fire Dragon Knight, Copper Dragon Knight, Grey Iron Dragon Knight, Bone Dragon Knight, Aluminum Dragon Knight, and King of the Fire Kingdom, List Flame. The King is writing to us? Wow, there are so many Dragon Knight. There is only one Dragon Knight, and His Majesty is riding many dragons. Really, a letter from the King? How great!" When the serfs heard the long list of titles, they were so surprised that they could not close their mouths. "Be quiet, all of you." Sir White ***'s assistant immediately lashed the whip in his hand on the ground, making a crisp snapping sound. The crowd quickly fell silent. Only then did Sir White **** pretend to take out a letter and read it word by word. "To my people who have come from afar, you are very unfortunate. You have lost your land, your homes, and even your loved ones. However, you are also very fortunate. In the Fire Kingdom, you will be able to start a new life. In the name of the King, I promise you that everyone will be able to work, have enough to eat, get married, and have children. You will not be disturbed by war. Your children will be able to train their combat aura and learn knowledge. They will be blessed by the glory of knights and be protected by the King." Chapter 1045. In China, there was a type of city called the Ghost City. There were many tall buildings and mountains, but they were empty and uninhabited. Hence, many foreign reporters reported that China's economy was collapsing and that it would be over soon. However, once the shops moved in and the facilities opened, the place would soon be filled with Chinese and become a new prosperous area. List admired this model. He wanted to build many such ghost cities in his territory. Empty houses, empty streets, empty roads, and even the fields outside the cities were empty. There were no crops. Basically, there were ghost cities on the main roads, flat farmland, and other areas. Not only did it include ghost cities at the level of a small town, but it also included ghost cities at the level of a small city. List even planned to build a few ghost cities at the level of a major city in the important areas of Flame Island. He was not afraid of the empty cities at all. As long as he continued to wage war and plunder, the people he plundered would automatically fill up the ghost cities and quickly start operations. The new batches of serfs that had arrived in Reed City were being sent to the various ghost cities. Many of the nobles who had voluntarily surrendered had their serfs absorbed by List as well. These serfs would gradually regain their freedom in the future and fill the ranks of the free citizens. It would be the breeding ground for the future knight class. In fact, as the Fire Kingdom continued to develop technology, combining magic with farming and industry, the serf system could no longer keep up with the times. The power brought by the Fire Dragon super magic directly pushed the traditional handicrafts to the stage of factories. The birth of a large number of factories such as brick factories, glass factories, paper factories, cement factories, textile factories, and so on freed countless serfs from the farmlands and turned them into professional workers. Of course, there was still a long way to go to transition from serfdom to an industrial society. However, with the rapid development of the Guild of Magic and the continuous advancement of magic technology, the Fire Kingdom would one day fully realize a new civilization. List was not opposed to such progress. The reason was simple. If such a change similar to the Industrial Revolution happened on Earth, society would be in turmoil and the rulers would likely become prisoners. However, in this world, power was ultimately the most important. Controlling the dragon was the foundation of ruling. The status of a dragon-rearing family would not change with the changes in society. As long as they had the dragon in their hands, they would be the most noble nobles in the world at all times. All he needed to do was to guard against the return of the magicians. After experiencing the power of magic, not only did his vigilance not weaken, it became even stronger. Only magic could compete with dragons. Anyway, the serfs who had migrated to Flames Island listened to the letter read by the receptionist. The credibility of the king in this era was still very strong. Even if it was just an open letter, it was still enough to make all the uneasy serfs calm down and follow the officials to live in the ghost city. The little boy, Jim, and his mother had also settled down in a small city under the jurisdiction of Infernal Fire City. The mother's job hadn't been settled yet, but the little boy had already been sent to school. Together with many other Moon Killer and Flame Men children of the same age, he received night lessons. The first lesson in school was called Loyalty Class. The three teachers used Serpentine, Wind Language, and Moon Language respectively to talk about the origin of the Fire Kingdom, the Great King, and the ruler of everyone. List Flame. Young Jim had heard this name countless times in just over a month, and it was deeply engraved in his mind. He also made some reflexive associations. List Flame was great, was glory, was the Dragon Knight, was the king, was the ruler, was the most honorable person in the world. This belief was like a seed, buried in the heart of every child, germinating and growing with them. At the same time, the master of all the brainwashing methods, List, had already driven the invisible dragon bard to the Gulf of Aden, continuing to secretly protect orders of chivalry's ransacking of the coastline. Once again, a large number of nobles and lords were defeated. Then, the captives were captured and those who surrendered. From top to bottom, everything that could be taken away was plundered. Because they didn't know that orders of chivalry, under the banner of expansion, would turn around and attack the Gulf of Aden from the dense corridor. Many noble lords didn't have time to hide, and were wiped out by orders of chivalry. The battle results are very rich. Another large number of knight and civilians came in, and the population of the Fire Kingdom has skyrocketed. He was very satisfied with such a harvest. However, there was also a hint of regret in his satisfaction. It's a pity that the Eagle royal family has adopted a cowardly attitude and ignored the development of the war here. Otherwise, would really want to have another dragon-slaying war. Today, I'm stronger than I was before, and my dragons are stronger too. I also want to participate in a dragon-slaying war and fight side by side with your majesty, Emily responded. There will be a chance. The Eagle Kingdom may be waiting for an opportunity. According to my investigation, the Eagle royal family has sent messengers to the Steel Ridge and the Blast Furnace Castle several times, trying to form an alliance with the three to fight against me. Although the Steel Ridge and the Blast Furnace Castle have no intention of forming an alliance at present, there will be sooner or later. List's infiltration of the three kingdoms had never stopped. His blood servants had already developed and grown. Merry Dawn and Daybreak, with his permission, had transformed a large number of new vampires. He even let Crazy control the Guild of Magic to add fuel to the fire, providing professional guidance for the vampires, training and evolving them into scouts. The new vampires' combat power was negligible, but the Bat Incarnation spell had been greatly improved. It was easier to hide its breath, and even the Sky Knight couldn't sense it. With the help of these new vampires, most of the news in the three kingdoms could be investigated. Moreover, the long-distance communication of the magic platform also allowed the vampires to send information back to the kingdom at any time. The efficiency was so high that the three kingdoms couldn't imagine it. Who asked the Fire Kingdom to enter the information age in advance? In terms of intelligence investigation, the Fire Kingdom was already far ahead. In addition, the Guild of Magic was also studying the 4 shadow incarnations, including Heathley Shadow, in preparation to crack this training system. Once successful, it would be another rich method of investigation. Unfortunately, the King of Shadows, Louis Shadow, would rather die than submit. He didn't reveal any information about the Shadow incarnation, which increased the difficulty of cracking it. Now is the best time to form an alliance to strangle the newborn Fire Kingdom. They won't have a chance in the future, Emily said after thinking. Why do you say so? Because with the speed of His Majesty's dragon riding, the number of dragons will soon exceed the 8 dragons of the Eagle Kingdom. Including the vassal countries, they only have 12 dragons. List smiled slightly. Actually, the number of dragons I have has already caught up with the Eagle Kingdom, because I also have a small water dragon that I keep in the sea. The fire dragon Leo, the light emerald dragon Isan, the invisible dragon Bard, the gray iron dragon Orn, the mountain copper dragon Marta, the bone dragon Winnie, the aluminum dragon Connor, and the water dragon Walter. There were exactly 8 dragons, the same number of dragons as the Eagle royal family. Emily opened her mouth in a well-timed surprise. Did His Majesty get another new dragon? How great! Chapter 1046. Emily's praise was sincere. In fact, even Liszt himself felt that it was great. He was already riding 8 dragons, and there was also a Chi, the magic shooter riding a unicorn, and Laird Truth, the new magic shooter who had joined them. It was equivalent to gathering 10 people who stood at the pinnacle of strength. From the perspective of the dragon-slaying war, it was already enough to overthrow the rule of the Eagle Kingdom in one battle. However, from the basic level, the Knight class of the Fire Kingdom was still too small. It was unable to replace the Eagle Kingdom in ruling such a large territory. Moreover, the Eagle Kingdom would not want to accept the dragon-slaying war. Adonis Moonlight Silver's strategy was very simple, which was to avoid battle, accumulate strength, and then frantically call for reinforcements to stop Liszt's expansion. He had already revealed the news of the Divine Dragon to the Noble Frost Empire. Obviously, the Unsetting Light Empire and the Blue Dragon Empire had already received the news. However, the distance between the two empires was too far. It would not be easy for them to come over and snatch the invisible dragon. Or perhaps they were plotting something in secret. This was also the thing that Liszt was most wary of. He did not dare to rashly launch the dragon-slaying war, fearing that the two empires would take advantage of the dragon-slaying war to secretly harm him. It was hard to say whether the Phoenix Incarnation's trump card had been exposed. Who knew what kind of unimaginable methods the empire, which had been passed down for thousands of years, had. Moreover, even if we defeat the Eagle Kingdom in the Battle of Dragon Slaying, we won't be able to snatch so many dragons. The soul brand is a huge problem. He sighed in his heart. The soul imprint had a huge enhancement effect on the dragon's soul world. Not only did he have to face a dragon, but he also had to face a perfect dragon knight. He had to use the bewildering dragon's soul fruit to lock the dragon's body. Only then would he be able to use it again and finally erase the soul imprint. He only had 2 soul fruits of the mysterious dragon, and it was not cost-effective to use them on the dragons of the Eagle Kingdom. Even with the hind legs of the Emerald Dragon, it would definitely cost a huge price to cultivate the soul fruit tree and produce new soul fruits of the mysterious dragon. He might even have to use the corpses of the dragons as nutrients to cultivate the fruit tree. The heart fruit tree on the Heart Island had been nourished by the Emerald Dragon Ethan to bear fruit. In other words, one dragon could be used as nutrients to produce 2 to 3 enigmatic dragon's soul fruits. It sounded very profitable, but it was too difficult to execute something like killing a dragon and obtaining its fruit perfectly. After all, the resources needed to nurture an adult dragon were definitely astronomical. The Noble Frost Empire had the remains of the Emerald Dragon, which could be used to cultivate the mystifying dragon soul fruit. However, the dragons of the Noble Frost Empire did not grow crazily, which showed the complexity of the restrictions. However, I don't know if I can try to unite with the Iron and Steel Ridge Kingdom, or even the Blast Furnace Kingdom, to divide up the Eagle Kingdom? The Fire Kingdom is destined to rise. I have the invisible dragon. Even the noble Frost Empire can't assassinate me. The Iron and Steel Ridge and the Blast Furnace Fort have no means to destroy me. Since the Fire Kingdom could not be destroyed, Steel Ridge and Furnace Castle's only choice was to passively resist or actively cooperate. Passive resistance was no different from slowly waiting for death. With the political means of the two royal families, they should be able to recognize this. Therefore, active cooperation was a more suitable choice. They could divide up the Eagle Kingdom and then grow together. After their strength increased, they would have more confidence to deal with the rise of the Fire Kingdom. In fact, no matter what choice I make, I feel that I can't stop my rise. With the growth of my strength, I will soon become a behemoth. But I can try to make the Iron and Steel Ridge and the Blast Furnace Fort believe that I only covet the mainland land of the Eagle Kingdom. After annexing a part of the Eagle Kingdom, I will be satisfied and stand on equal footing with them. He was too lazy to think about this kind of head-hurting diplomatic strategy. He might as well leave it to the Development Committee to worry about after he went back. In the autumn of 156 of the Sapphire Calendar, the war for expansion began in October. The two rich coastlines of the Lush Corridor and the Gulf of Aden were plundered successively, and ended at the end of December. The knight who broke through the enemy lines returned to their territories, embraced their wives and children, and also brought back countless spoils of war. This time, there were tens of thousands of Earth Knight, hundreds of thousands of Trainee Knight, and hundreds of thousands of serfs who were forced to migrate to the Fire Kingdom. There were also a large number of aristocratic lords among them. However, the majority of these aristocratic lords had directly surrendered and were not treated as captives. List was too embarrassed to forcibly take away their wealth. There were very few captives who were truly captured, and even fewer captives who were willing to pay ransom in exchange for freedom, because there was no point in going back. The entire Lush Corridor and the Gulf of Aden were already empty. The population, resources, sprites, and so on were all packed up and taken away. The Fire Dragon Freighter and Iron Dragon warship were like public buses, going back and forth to the Spirit Island and the coastline. When the Eagle royal family received the information sent back by the rats, List did not know what Adonis was thinking, but he was definitely very happy. As the last fleet left the coastline of the continent, he also immediately left and returned to Flame Island, where he silently counted the harvest of this time's war for expansion. Compared to last year's hasty development order, this year's preparations were more adequate and the scale was also larger. As a result, the population and resource harvest were more than 4 times that of last year. Unfortunately, there were too many greater aristocrats who had surrendered, and List did not get many sprites to replenish himself. With only a few lesser sprites and a batch of sprite worms, the harvest was not as great as that of the sprites born on Flame Island. Father, the knight who joined this time's development order must be carefully arranged and strictly supervised. Many of them used to secretly run mercenary groups, doing shady business. I do not want them to come to the Fire Kingdom and bring this kind of atmosphere with them. Rest assured, I will carefully manage these knight. Any aristocrat who violates the law, no matter how high their rank is, must be dealt with severely. Punishing them without warning is somewhat not benevolent enough. Father, it would be better for you to draft the Fire Kingdom's Knight Management Code, in my name, stipulating which behaviors are to be encouraged and which behaviors must be prohibited. Recently, the Development Committee has been compiling the laws of the future Fire Kingdom. The main body has already been completed, and we can just casually extract some regulations from it to compile the Fire Kingdom's Knight Management Code. Lee William explained. His biggest task as the Development Committee member was to prepare for the establishment of a country. A country, especially a kingdom. Once established, all aspects of laws and regulations, social system, production and construction, diplomatic strategy, internal framework, and the enfeoffment of knight had to be perfected as soon as possible. Otherwise, the country would sooner or later fall into chaos. In fact, if not for List's formidable deterrence, the Fire Kingdom would have long since descended into chaos. The composition of the population was too unbalanced. Currently, the Moon Killer was the largest group of people, but most of them belonged to the lowest class. At first, they might be happy because they could leave the forest and live a full life, but over time, they would see that other people were living better lives, and it was inevitable that their mentality would explode. Fortunately, the ancient wizards among the Moon Killer had been properly settled, and the resentment of the serfs at the bottom was not a big problem. The second largest group of people were the Eagle Men, who had migrated in batches. Some were captives who had surrendered, while others were serfs who had been sold. Language, culture, and customs made it inevitable for the Eagle Men to group together for warmth. This was a very big barrier. Even if the Eagle Men were forcibly dispersed and placed in different cities, they would still form cliques. Then there were the senators known as the Flame Men, who were the most loyal to List, but their numbers were too small. In short, the Fire Kingdom was like a plate of loose sand that had been forcibly squeezed together by List. With his powerful strength, he used the strict hierarchy of nobles, commoners, and serfs under the knight system to maintain it. It would take a long time to completely stabilize it before everyone could be converted into Fire Kingdom subjects. List was not worried about this. As long as he existed, the Fire Kingdom would not fall into chaos. He now had a new expectation. It's almost New Year's Day, the Red and White Rose family's emissary group should be arriving soon. I wonder what gifts my old friend has sent this year. Chapter 1047. The gifts from the Rose and White Rose family were still the same: platinum potions and red dragon water. It seemed that other gifts did not show the wealth of the Rose and White Rose family. But this year, Matthew Rose White Rose did not come. She only brought a greeting letter from her sister, Marilyn. In the letter, she mainly asked about List and Achi, and revealed her admiration for List. She also mentioned that she had graduated from the aristocratic girls' school in the Iron and Steel Ridge Kingdom and returned to live in the Grand Duchy of Rose. She also hoped that List would bless her next birthday. Anyway, this was the signal of marriage. As long as List agreed, the Rose and White Rose family would immediately send Marilyn over and make her the queen of the Fire Kingdom. But absorbing the Phoenix incarnation could prolong his life. After a few hundred years of life, he had little need for marriage and children. In fact, even if he had a strong need, he would not marry a woman he had never met. White paper and glass products in exchange for platinum potions and red dragon water. This friendship can continue. However, when the Fire Kingdom is established next year, our friendship will probably break apart. I'm such a scary person. I'm willing to sacrifice my body for my dragon. TSK. Thinking of this, he wrote a formal reply without showing any enthusiasm. Maybe he found his conscience. He even hoped that the Rose and White Rose family would find out his indifference and break off the idea of marriage. In any case, he did not want an innocent girl to be involved in the politics of the adults. After writing the reply, he sent someone to deliver it. It was the last day of December, the day before the New Year's Day. For several days, he had been feasting with his followers and conferring new titles. Under the relaxed promotion environment, a large number of knight had become nobles, and small nobles had easily become big nobles. When it came to the level of count and above, the promotion process would be very strict. So far, except for the nobles who already had the title of Duke and Marquis, they could easily get their titles back. Only Emily was conferred the title of Marquis because of her success in riding a dragon. As for the Duke, there was still only Piero Grayiron, a noble with a title. Although List intended to promote his father to a duke, the promotion ceremony would be held after the founding of the country. However, the promotion ceremony would be held after the founding of the nation. William Lee was still a marquis. There were also the 7 mermaids who were very powerful and helped him manage the sea. In the future, they would gradually be conferred the title of Duke. They were originally kings of the sea, and on land, they were at least equivalent to Grand Dukes. However, at this time, the kingdom of the sea had long been destroyed. The purification of the Devil's Sea required a Qi to preside over. Therefore, the title of Duke was the highest title that Liszt could give to the mermaids. In the future, I can set a precedent in the Fire Kingdom. The limit of a Sky Knight is Marquis. As long as I break through the shackles of perfection and become a Domain Knight, I can continue to advance to Duke. This way, D. Maria Rainflower Stone and the other followers will have even more enthusiasm to do things. For most nobles, becoming a marquis was their greatest goal in life. After all, very few non-dragon-raising families could become dukes. Once they became marquises, these great nobles would lose their drive. As for the Dragon Knight, I'm afraid that under my rule, it will be difficult for a new dragon-raising family to be born. Liszt rode the invisible dragon Bard, flying slowly in the sky. Because all the dragons that can be discovered will eventually become my dragons, and I refuse to let anyone touch them. He still remembered the scene he saw when he activated the Scepter of Time. Although it was only a possibility in the future, he deeply remembered what the future Qi had said. Qi told him to ride all the dragons and told him that the fairy dragon was in the land of exile. Everyone can share the elves, but the dragons must belong to me. At this moment, Liszt stood at the top of the sacred mountain of the Killing Moon people, looking at the vigorous construction of the future palace. He was very proud of himself. All of this was fought for by him. After asking Qi, Emily, Father, and the others, the sacred mountain of the Killing Moon people finally has a new name. The mountain range on the left is called Moon Mountain, the mountain range on the right is called Sun Mountain, and the valley is called Sun Moon Valley. As for the palace standing between Moon Mountain and Sun Mountain, it is called Sun Moon Palace. Heaven and earth were black and yellow, the universe was chaotic. The sun and the moon were dim, and the constellations were arranged. The meaning of the name Sun Moon Palace was to include the universe, and Sun Mountain and Moon Mountain were to inherit the glory of the Moon Empire and the Sun Empire in the ancient times. All countries like to claim that they were the direct descendants of the Moon Empire, showing off that they had inherited the ancient civilization. Liszt simply caught them all at once. Not only did he inherit the Moon Empire, but he also inherited the Sun Empire. In addition, many countries like to name their cities, palaces, and surnames after dragons. The palace of the Iron and Steel Ridge Kingdom was called the Platinum Tooth Palace, after the Platinum Dragon, Platinum Dragon. The palace of the Eagle Kingdom was called the Iron Dragon Chain Palace, after the White Iron Dragon. The palace of the Blast Furnace Kingdom was called the Golden Supreme Palace, after the Golden Dragon. The founders of these royal families were probably the Platinum Dragon Knight, the White Iron Dragon Knight, and the Golden Dragon Knight. Therefore, the palace was named after them. However, Liszt had too many dragons, and every single one of them was a Dragon Knight. Naming one dragon after another was too narrow, and there was no way to be fair. He used the flame as his surname, the name of the kingdom, and the status of the fire dragon Leo. He could still use his first time riding a dragon as an excuse. If he named them after any other dragons, it would cause the dissatisfaction of the other dragons. As a dragon knight of many dragons, he had to balance it. His heart was so tired. He really wanted to train a group of dragon knight to share the burden. The construction of the Sun Moon Palace is 1/3 complete. In another half a year, the main part should be completed, and then we can move in. After the main part is completed, the remaining parts are some wonders. This requires the cooperation of magic shooters, so there is no hurry. I'll leave it to Qi. Women all like to decorate their own houses. Liszt simply handed over the spectacular style to Qi to play with. Needless to say, Qi was really interested in this aspect. She had already taken the time to design all kinds of wonders. Some of the creativity even amazed Liszt, such as flying moats, vertical elevators, small magic doors, air parks, artificial sun, moon, and stars, crystal colorful covers, dragon sculptures of equal proportions, eternal torches, endless cumulonimbus clouds. She wanted to make the Sun-Moon Palace a place where God lived. Don't mess around too much, Achi. You still have to save where it's necessary. After all, our family is big, and we have several dragons to feed. Achi stuck out her little tongue playfully. Brother, don't worry. Achi is just using the Sun-Moon Palace to do experiments to verify some magic technical problems, hee. List only smiled. Then he rubbed Achi's beautiful blue hair hard. No matter what it was, he wanted it. Chapter 1048. Dang, 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 dang. When the clock on top of Fire City's office struck 6, it signified the arrival of the new year. Year 156 of the Sapphire calendar had passed, and the year 157 had officially begun. List, who had just returned from inspecting the Palace of Stars, stood on the balcony of Fire Castle, looking at the starry night sky. Not long after, countless magic fireworks were shot into the sky from Fire City, the surrounding towns, and the castles. Magic transformed into colorful fireworks. Flowers bloomed in the night sky, bringing the New Year's atmosphere to a climax. It's a pity that there's no unknown reward for the smoke mission this year. I feel like something's missing. He shook his head. He summoned the smoke mission. The content of the mission was still the same. Mission: 202 choices of fate, guidance and prediction. You've grown from a small feudal lord to the ruler of a country. As the Fire Kingdom is about to be established, perhaps it's time to think more deeply. Please touch the barrier. Reward: blessing of fate. Touch the barrier. This was a huge problem. He had been pondering about this for nearly half a year. He had been improving his training methods with Leo, the fire dragon, who had already branded him with the spiritual brand. He tried various beneficial combat aura and magic circulation systems. He still couldn't touch the barrier. He didn't even have a clue about it. Among the other dragons, the invisible dragon bard's spiritual brand was becoming clearer and clearer. It wouldn't be long before it was completely branded. Grey Iron Dragon Orn and Bronze Dragon Marta also had a blurry image. However, these two dragons didn't have much of an impression of him, so their training speed was slower. Aluminum Dragon Connor and Water Dragon Wouter didn't show any signs of a brand yet. Bone Dragon Winnie wasn't a complete dragon, so there was no spiritual brand. As for Light Emerald Dragon Ethan, who had been branded with the spiritual brand, it had become Emily's mount. List didn't continue training with it. His relationship with Ethan was very strange. Ethan was essentially his dragon, but the knight was Emily. It was like one dragon on two boats. As long as List was willing, he could rely on the spiritual brand to take over Ethan. However, he usually blocked the telepathic link with Ethan. Just like how the first-generation Dragon Knight was already dead, Emily was controlling the dragon's basic will with the soul brand alone. I've been training with Leo for a long time, but we couldn't find any clues about the barrier. Also, this shouldn't be something that can be slowly figured out over time. Otherwise, since the establishment of the Knight system, there have been countless talented Dragon Knights. Some of them must have broken through the barrier and achieved extraordinary things. However, the truth was that a perfect Dragon Knight was the pinnacle. There was no existence above the Dragon Knight. The situation of the unsetting Radiance Empire and the Blue Dragon Empire was unknown, but List had already learned about the Dragon Knight of the Noble Frost Empire through Laird Truth. There was no one stronger than the Dragon Knight. As a Dark Dragon Knight, their Emperor, Emperor Jupiter, was the strongest Dragon Knight in the Frost Empire. Now, we just have to wait for Achi to grasp the inspiration and decipher the stronghold's information. If Achi fails as well, I can only hope that Bard will be able to take another look at the weave dragon that broke the barrier. As his thoughts drifted, he heard someone call him, "Your Majesty, what are you thinking about?" Liszt came back to his senses and found that it was Paris who had followed him to the balcony. During the New Year's Day, he was used to inviting some of his close, single followers to Fire Castle to celebrate the New Year's Day together. There was no restriction on men and women, but the close male followers had families. Only Paris, Emily, Chris Truth, Kenley Truth, Mary Dawn Daybreak, and other women were still single and had no relatives. Paris had a younger sister, Maggie, who had been adopted back in Flower Town. Therefore, this year, Paris was still spending the New Year's Day in Fire Castle. The former Black Dragon gang was now a light magic swordsman with the title of Count. Her training system was quite interesting. Most of the systems were completely new and were derived by the Light Magic Swordsman research group specially established by the Guild of Magic. The Light Magic Swordsman research group belonged to the Dragon Warrior Laboratory, which led the development of the Light Magic Swordsman, Fire Magic Swordsman, Shadow Incarnation, and other cultivation systems. Among them, the development of Shadow Incarnation was set up after the capture of the King of Shadows, Louis Shadow. They had wanted to use Louis as a breakthrough point, but in the end, it was all for naught. Therefore, the Dragon Warrior Laboratory still had to refer to Paris training along the way to formulate a follow-up training system. Think about the future. Liszt looked up at the sky with his hands behind his back. The magic fireworks in the sky were already sparse, and only the mages in the Mage Tower in the distance were still playing with magic fireworks tirelessly. The future. Paris gathered a strand of hair hanging by her ear and sighed faintly. Today, she was not wearing her favorite leather armor, or the frac habillé, which represented the title of nobility. Instead, she changed into a lady's dress that aristocratic ladies loved to wear. It had a loose skirt, a slender waist, and a pleated neckline, just enough to expose her beautiful collarbone. The original valiant and heroic style was replaced by a feminine delicacy and sexiness, and every move was charming and seductive. "Why are you sighing?" asked Liszt. Paris smiled faintly. "Maybe it's because I'm getting old. After the new year, I'll be 24 years old, and I've been following His Majesty for 5 years. 5 years? Well, speaking of which, I'm also 22 years old this year." After his coming-of-age ceremony at the age of 16, he transmigrated to this world in March of year 151 of the Sapphire calendar. Then, in December, he met Paris. He had indeed known Paris for 5 years, and in another 3 months, it would be 6 years since he transmigrated to this world. Too much had changed in the past 6 years. Many 22-year-old knight may only be an earth knight, but His Majesty has risen from nothing to become a king of a country and a great dragon knight. The greatest fortune in Paris' life is to follow His Majesty. She did not hide the admiration and adoration in her eyes. Such a heroic figure, even a woman would find it difficult to hide such emotions. Liszt enjoyed the admiration in her eyes and could not help but respond gently, "Meeting you is also my fortune, Paris." The past events of the Flower Town still surface in my mind from time to time. "Your Majesty, do you really think that meeting Paris is also a fortune?" "Of course." Paris' breathing became a bit heavy, and the emotions in her eyes were so intense that it seemed like they were about to drip water. After a while, she calmed down a little. "I really hope that His Majesty does not feel that you are lucky. Your luck makes it hard for me to control myself." Liszt raised his eyebrows. "Why do you say that?" Paris raised her head and looked straight into Liszt's eyes. "I used to hide my admiration for His Majesty, but it still pops up from time to time. My reason tells me that I shouldn't have any extravagant hopes, but my emotions are like moths. Even if it is a flame, I will still throw myself into it regardless of my own safety." This was a bold confession, and also the first time she had expressed her admiration. Liszt was caught off guard, but after all, he had been in pleasure circles for many years. He just reached out and lifted Paris's chin. The other party's height of 1.75 meters was very outstanding among women, but in front of his height of 1.9 meters, it was nothing. Are you ready to be a moth flying into a flame? Chapter 1049. It was a wonderful feeling, like a moth flying into a flame. Good news came just after the new year. This time, it was from Bard the Invisible Dragon. While Liszt was busy socializing during the new year, Bard wandered aimlessly in the world outside of the material world. Ever since the magic teleportation array was built, he no longer had to worry about getting lost. Unexpectedly, he found a natural node. After opening it, he found himself on the west coast of Flames Island, in an area of islands and reefs. He still remembered that Liszt had always wanted to open more teleportation arrays on Flames Island and build the island into a transportation network that extended in all directions. There was no doubt that this was a very valuable natural node. It could connect the west coast of Flames Island to the transportation network. So, Liszt followed Bard here excitedly to inspect the environment. The waves of the sea kept crashing against the reefs. The scenery of the blue sea and blue sky made him feel a sense of pride. I just want to recite a poem in this situation. Facing the rock to the east, watching the sea from the west. How dark the water is, and the mountains stand tall. Trees are everywhere, and the grass is lush. This poem did not fit in with the scenery here. There were no trees in the reef area, and it was not in the East Sea, but in the West Sea, about 100 meters offshore. Standing on the reef, one could see the coastline in the distance. There was a beach that stretched as far as the eye could see. The sand was white and clean, and occasionally there were one or two trees that looked like fragrant coconut trees. Further away, there were sparse bushes, and the land was mostly sand and gravel, not suitable for farming. The soil and water in the northwest half of Flames Island were not as good as in the southeast half. There were few dense forests, and it was more like a grassland or a desert. The mages of the Guild of Magic had done long-term research here. The rainfall was obviously less than that of the southeast half, and it was very dry in winter. Although the northwest half is not livable, it does not mean that there is no land suitable for farming. There are a few river basins, and it can be developed into a land of fish and rice. Moreover, the terrain is relatively flat, suitable for grazing. In the future, it can become a large pasture for the Fire Kingdom. Therefore, it was very necessary to build a large city on the east coast. In the future, if he wanted to build a teleportation magic array to communicate with the other regions of the Blazing Island, this place would undoubtedly be the most suitable. Bard, fly freely here for a while. I'm going to explore the underwater environment of the reef area and see if there's anything special about this place that can create a natural node, Liszt said as he summoned the little water dragon, Wouter, who had already attached itself to his kidneys. Walter did not have a suitable dragon nest, so he could not absorb water element supreme demons every day. Therefore, his body's development was very slow, and he did not grow at all. Leo, on the other hand, had used the volcano to nurture his supreme demon, which allowed him to improve by leaps and bounds. Yo-ho! After Walter flew out, he landed on the surface of the water and looked around curiously. Then, Liszt rode on it and connected their minds as one. In an instant, they submerged into the sea and searched for every trace of special existence at the bottom of the sea. Any natural node could be related to the supreme demons. Or rather, it had something to do with dragons. Dragons were the source of most supreme magic. He cast Magic Eye. Synchronizing with Wouter, his field of vision was soon replaced by that of a water dragon. Every trace of water in the sea was presented in his eyes, and the simple Magic Eye was strengthened several times. This was the same principle as the fire dragon Leo's Dragon Eye Track. Liszt was too lazy to rename it, so he still called it Dragon Eye Track. Elemental dragons could probably synchronize with Magic Eye, and so could invisible dragons. Only metal dragons, gem dragons, and bone dragons were not compatible with Magic Eye. Dragon Eye Track kept scanning. He scanned every reef on the seabed, but did not find any signs of magic, not even a single sea monster. The natural nodes are between the reefs, not under the sea. It's hard to tell what happened when the supreme magic formed the natural nodes. Roland nodded. After searching back and forth carefully, he still did not find any clues related to magic. In the end, he could only declare the search a failure. There was no treasure left by the dragons at this natural node. Perhaps it was just a supreme magic wave caused by a fight between dragons in ancient times that caused the natural node. Before this, there were several natural nodes that he could not find anything. Let's call it the Reef Natural Node. I plan to build a reef city here. After deciding on the name of the reef city, List recalled the little water dragon Wouter. He rode on Invisible Dragon Bard and left for the Mermaid City. He wanted to ask the mermaids to send a group of ugly fish to the reef city to build a city. The aquaculture industry was not prosperous enough, and many ugly fish had nothing to do. So, he decided to let them participate in the construction of the city, so that they would not waste their energy. Your Majesty, the water here is very good, and there are many fish. It's a natural fishing ground, said the mermaid lost Marquis, Kukulizi. You found a school of fish? Yes, I felt it. There are large schools of fish wandering around in the sea nearby. That's good. It's more suitable to build the reef city here. Now that Marquis Brackish Water, Bruce Bossy, is in charge of the Mermaid City, you can take charge of the reef city here. Build the city half on the sea and half on land. In the future, this will be the central city of the East Coast. As you wish, Your Majesty. Kulizi nodded in agreement. Although the era of the mermaids had passed, as the remaining mermaids, their biggest wish was to purify the sea. But this did not mean that they did not have desires, especially when the Magic Guild was helping them develop the source of vitality potion that could stimulate fertility. This gave them the possibility to reproduce, and their desires were also born. They had their own demands for power and status, and even secretly competed with each other. Currently, the fugitive Marquis, Viswendi, had signed a contract with a Chi with the mermaid's heart and became the butler of the Anchor Island Sea Laboratory. He was in charge of the marine experiments and began to take the path of magic research. Marquis of Great West, Etnia, as the oldest mermaid, mainly served as List's assistant in the sea, and was responsible for protecting List when he was out at sea. Marquis Brackish Water, Bruce Bossy, was in charge of the Mermaid City. List had already negotiated with her to give the mermaid's heart to Emily. As a dragon knight of the sea, it would be a pity if she did not know how to swim. That was why List let Emily contract the mermaid's heart, adding a life-saving skill. Marquis Gulvig was a field agent, and her temporary duties were very interesting. List specially ordered her to move the dragon turtles of the Dragon Turtle Island and the Thunder Dragon Turtle of the Black Horse Island to the Flame Islands by sea. The Thunder Dragon Turtle was a super dragon beast, and the ordinary dragon turtles were also high-level World of Warcraft, which was very valuable. Marquis Kulizi, the Lost Marquis, would be in charge of the Reef City. Marquis of Water, Tiberius, and Marquis of Trench, Sheriwala, were left. List was going to send these two mermaids to the Heart Island to protect the safety of the Heart Island. As the Flame Kingdom's only two gates to the outside world, the importance of the Heart Island was self-evident. By the way, Coco Rich, when do you plan to depart for your plan to travel around the legendary continent's coastal waters? List asked. Marquis Etnia thinks that this spring is a very suitable season. A year's time is enough for us to cruise the entire legendary continent's coastal waters. We want to see if there are any mermaids, or inferior races like Naga and clownfish. The sea used to be so prosperous, but now it's lonely everywhere. Coco Rich's tone was rather melancholic. Chapter 1050. Big Dragon Died, applies for leave. Currently typing, please wait a moment. After the content has been updated, please refresh the page to receive the latest update. Chapter 1051. List did not know how big the legendary continent was. Based on some of his previous speculations and Achi's research on astronomy, List was able to estimate it. It could be roughly deduced that this world was a huge sphere. However, due to the imperfection of the theory and the lack of measuring equipment, a more precise verification could not be completed. Hence, there was no way to calculate how big the legendary continent was. And in these few years, even if List became a dragon knight and Achi became a magic shooter, they still didn't have time to travel the world. Their range of activities was basically in the northeast corner of the legendary continent, as well as the Aquamarine Sea and the Shell Sea. The furthest they could go was the edge of the Devil Sea. His knowledge of this planet was limited to the fact that there were two continents in the Endless Ocean, the legendary continent and the Malfa continent. However, the distribution of these two continents on the planet was not easy to determine. Since it was impossible to determine the distribution of the land, the distribution of the sea was naturally not very clear. Sometimes, List wondered if the legendary continent and the Malfa continent were similar to the Eurasian continent and the American continent on the two hemispheres of the planet. Without the support of actual investigation data, he could only make wild guesses. Coincidentally, 7 mermaids were resurrected this time. Lamenting the decline of the mermaids, the 7 mermaids decided to travel around the sea to see if there were any other mermaids who survived. List then asked the mermaids to bring along the sextant to map the coastline of the legendary continent. At the same time, they also wanted to map the depth and location of the ocean. Right now, Merfolk City can't do without Burabosi's command, and once Reef City is built, you'll be in charge of it as well. I can only let Etnia and the others travel around the sea in groups. Your Majesty, why don't we postpone the construction of Reef City? I also want to travel the seas. His Excellency Acheroids had studied the demons for a long time, but it would still take a long time before he could truly begin to purify the Devil's Sea. I want to take advantage of this period of time to see the sea. In my era, I have never seen the sea properly. Oh, then it's decided. He nodded in agreement. Actually, he didn't want all the mermaids to go around the ocean and not work. Now that the Fire Kingdom was in full swing, a large number of ugly fish could be used to make up for the lack of labor. They couldn't do without the mermaids at all. However, he did not want to exploit them too much, so he was willing to give the mermaids a certain amount of freedom. Perhaps on this trip around the ocean, they would be able to find more mermaids who had survived and bring them back to the Fire Kingdom. Therefore, he generously sent the mermaids on their journey. Only the Marquis of Saltwater, Burubushi, had no choice but to stay behind. He continued to oversee the mermaid city, commanding the ugly fish laborers to participate in the construction. I don't know what they will gain from this trip. Let's not talk about whether they can find the mermaids who survived. The coastline of the legendary continent will definitely be mapped out. I just don't know if there are any other gains outside of the legendary continent. The mermaid circumnavigation of the sea was just an interlude. List quickly put it to the back of his mind, not completely. He had a contract with the mermaids, and with the help of the contract, he could communicate with them over long distances and keep track of their movements. It was just that he was very busy with work now. The spring plowing had already begun, and the schools in various cities had already opened. As the king of the Kingdom of Fire, he could not help but show his face at some of the spring plowing sites to show his concern for the work, or he could go to school to give a speech, especially to the Royal Academy, to gain the loyalty of a wave of young knight. The Dragon Knight selection plan had finally opened, and 3 people had been selected. They were Hippolyta, the Moonslayer who had previously protected the elves, Nikolai Bellows, the grandson of the Iron Knight family Count Nikolai Bellows, and de Gaulle, the posthumous son of an Earth Knight. Hippolyta had trained for less than 2 years, but she had already successfully become an elite Earth Knight. She was also very adaptable to potions, and had a high chance of becoming a Sky Knight before the age of 16. Thus, she barely qualified as a Dragon Knight candidate, and was recommended by the Royal Academy to participate in the Dragon Knight selection plan. Nikolai Bellows was not yet 16 years old, but he had already become a Sky Knight. He was a genius of the Bellows family. Although he aspired to become an Iron Knight, he also desired to become a Dragon Knight. As for de Gaulle, he was just an ordinary Earth Knight without a title. His mother brought him to live on Hot Spring Island. Following List's crusade against the Count of Hot Spring Island, he was moved to live in the Kingdom of Fire. He was only 12 years old this year, but he was already an elite Earth Knight, and was also recommended by the Royal Academy. Hippolyta, Nikolai, de Gaulle, you should already know the meaning of the Dragon Knight selection plan. Apart from the three of you, only one person has been selected for the Fire Kingdom's Dragon Knight selection plan. She should have taught you all Knight classes in the Royal Academy. She is the light green gemstone Dragon Knight, Emily. List looked at the three people in front of him, and said with anticipation, everyone who is selected for the Dragon Knight selection plan is the future hope of the Fire Kingdom. You will enjoy the best treatment, and you will strive to ride a dragon. However, it is extremely difficult to ride a dragon. Your talents are not enough to shock the legendary continent, and you can only rely on hard work. Your Majesty, can you tell us what preparation we need to do to ride a dragon? Nikolai asked. He was the oldest among the three, and as a noble's son, he was also the most mature. At this moment, he looked at List fervently, looking forward to hearing more information about riding a dragon. He knew very well that the person in front of him was a terrifying existence that could ride 6 or 7 dragons all by himself. All the youngsters of the Fire Kingdom, especially the young knights, treated List as their goal to strive for. Although this goal was too far away for them, the youngsters were always like newborn calves that were not afraid of tigers. They thought that if others could do it, they could do it too. List's gaze swept across the three of them, and he sized them up carefully. Nikolai was a young man with a noble's natural arrogance, and his looks were average. De Gaulle was still young, but he was already taller than Nikolai. He was just a little timid and uneasy, and it was said that he was very hard-working in private, just like Emily in the past. Hippolyta was slender and graceful, and she was natural and unrestrained. As a girl, other than her wheat-colored skin, she was a beauty in every other aspect. It was said that in the Royal Academy, the boys who admired Hippolyta could form an orders of chivalry. However, the Royal Academy forbade young people from dating under the age of 18, which was why they didn't get jealous in private. Riding a dragon is difficult, but it's also very simple. List's gaze lingered on Hippolyta's slightly bulging chest for a moment before moving away. A 16-year-old Sky Knight is just a threshold. It means that you will be able to perfect your fighting aura at a very young age. He paused for a moment before continuing, perfecting one's fighting aura is the most basic requirement to attract a dragon. Being young is another criterion, but the most important is one's character. Dragons are arrogant and see humans as no different from ants. Without unshakable courage, unyielding perseverance, and loyalty and integrity, a dragon will not be able to be moved. Will courage, perseverance, and integrity be able to move a dragon? Nikolai asked again. No, it can only be said that with these qualities, you have the possibility of approaching a dragon. However, every dragon has their own requirements for choosing a knight, and you will need to explore and approach it yourself. It was still Nikolai who asked, but Your Majesty, you have already ridden so many dragons. Does every single one of them have the same requirements for you? List smiled, I'm different. You don't have to use me as a role model. For me, it is the dragons that are begging me to ride them, not me who wants their approval. Nikolai, de Gaulle, and Hippolyta's eyes widened at the same time. Please remember this book's domain name. 9 Heavens Shenhuang Mobile Version. Chapter 1052. List did not stay in the royal school for long to show his concern for the young people who had been selected as Dragon Knight candidates. There was no need for him to constantly show his existence. After all, the loyalty class in school was a compulsory course. Knight would receive brainwashing education from a young age to understand who was the true leader of the Fire Kingdom. In reality, List did not care much about the loyalty of a knight. Most of his followers were captives who had surrendered. There were not many who were loyal. He preferred to use benefits to rope in Knight and strengthen the system of the kingdom. Other than the feudal nobility, he also wanted to develop the Burning Legion. As a knight of the Fire family, this was a job that he valued. Recently, he had picked out a large group of knight who had achieved military service. Among them, he selected a small group of Fire Element Elite Earth Knight with a weak background and brought them to the Phoenix Forest in the Endless Volcanoes. Red Sparrow, it's this kind of big red bird. It's slightly violent, but it can be tamed as a mount. Standing on a phoenix tree that was already as thick as an arm's length, List directly used the awe of the phoenix ability to summon a high-grade magical beast, a red sparrow. The awe of the phoenix was the ability of the phoenix transformation. As he continued to develop it, he could now use it on a human body. The effect was not as strong as when he used the phoenix transformation. However, if he used it on a single bird, it could achieve the same effect as when he used the phoenix transformation. Coo. The red sparrow stood beside List and intimately rubbed its neck against List's shoulder. In the distance, there was a large group of red sparrows chirping noisily. However, under the influence of the awe of the Phoenix contract, they did not approach List. There were about 26 Fire Element Elite Earth Knights. They were all young knight, none of them over 20 years old. At this moment, the knights were staring at the red sparrow with passionate eyes. They naturally understood the reason why His Majesty had brought them here. Fire Element Advanced World of Warcraft Red Sparrow. Originally, my plan was to reward a Fire Element Sky Knight to tame and ride it. However, the Fire Kingdom had yet to be established and the number of Sky Knights was low, so they were demoted to Elite Earth Knight. You are very lucky to have the opportunity to ride them. List said in a clear voice. This was the truth. Advanced World of Warcraft, especially the flying-type Advanced World of Warcraft, were extremely rare. A flying-type World of Warcraft that could be tamed and mounted was even rarer. Each of them was priceless, and it would be a waste to give them to the Earth Knight. He had originally hoped to use the Cardinal, Fire Raven, and Fire Dragon Bird as his mounts to build the Burning Legion's most elite guards, the Orders of Chivalry. Every member of the Orders of Chivalry had to have great talent and loyalty cultivated from a young age. Only in this way could they obtain the power to protect the palace and the king. However, such a harsh requirement would be difficult to achieve within a decade. Talents were hard to come by, especially those who were willing to give up their status as nobles. That was why he lowered his requirements again and again, to the point where he relaxed his requirements to the elite Fire Element Earth Knight who was below 20 years old, had no bad behavior records, and did not come from a noble background. However, if these knight could not become a Sky Knight within a few years, their mount could only be the Cardinal. They would not have the chance to touch the more powerful Super Warcraft Fire Raven. After the elite Earth Knight rides the Cardinal, they will become the Cardinal Squad under the Burning Legion's Orders of Chivalry. From now on, you will be responsible for protecting the palace. When you are 25 years old, if you successfully become a Sky Knight, you will have the right to change your mount to the Fire Raven. The Fire Raven will be upgraded to the Crow Squad under the Burning Legion's Orders of Chivalry. From now on, you will be responsible for protecting the palace. If you can achieve full combat energy before the age of 35, you will have the right to change your mount to the Fire Raven. You will become a knight riding a super dragon, a true royal knight. The Royal Orders of Chivalry had 3 squads, the Royal Guard Squad, the Crow Squad, and the Cardinal Squad. It was not a strict establishment of the Orders of Chivalry. It was more of an honorary establishment. Because List himself had fire element combat energy, he was inclined to have a fire element knight as a royal guard. However, in the future, he would definitely open it to all combat energy attribute knight and build more squads. Among them, the Royal Guard squad was probably the highest level of glory. Only a knight who rode a super dragon beast could become a real imperial knight and obtain the right to escort the king when he went out. Currently, the only super dragon beasts that could be ridden in the Fire Kingdom were the Fire Raven and the Storm Dragon horse. As for the Thunder Dragon tortoise that was residing in the Mermaid City, it was the size of a small mountain and did not seem suitable for riding. There were 3 Storm Dragon horses. The Storm Dragon horse with its broken horn had become Lee William's new mount. As the father of a Dragon Knight and a Domain Knight, as well as being in charge of the administration of the Kingdom of Inferno, he indeed needed a mount that matched his status. List let Lee William choose the Fire Raven and the Storm Dragon horse. Lee William was not interested in the Fire Raven. He had water element combat energy and was not compatible with super dragon beasts of the fire element. Thus, he chose the Storm Dragon horse of the wind element. He hoped to choose the 2 that did not have a broken horn. However, those 2 horses were arrogant and disdained Lee William. Even the Storm Dragon horse with a broken horn was disdainful of him at first. In the end, it was List who found a Chi and asked her to entrust Charlie the Unicorn to force the Storm Dragon horse with a broken horn to agree to become Lee William's mount. After Lee William rode on the Storm Dragon horse, the first thing he did was to forge a horn made of magical metal alloy for the Storm Dragon horse and embed it on the broken horn. This allowed the Storm Dragon horse to regain its confidence as a super dragon beast. Having its horn broken was a humiliation to the Storm Dragon horse, and it had always felt inferior. Thus, the Storm Dragon horse with a broken horn accepted Lee William. For a period of time, Lee William rode the Storm Dragon horse every day, patrolling his territory and proudly showing off. The Storm Dragon horse was not a unicorn. However, not many people knew the difference, and no one knew how Lee William rode it. Thus, many people mistakenly believed that Lee William's ability to ride a unicorn meant that he was an upright, righteous, and noble knight. After all, Lee William was not a pure, virgin knight. After all, his grandchildren could run all over the place. Lee William's prestige soared because of this. Screech! The blazing dragon bird cried out crisply in the distance. It was the Phoenix dragon elf, Infant. She flew over on Little Red and landed beside List. Infant, who was wearing a small armor, jumped off the bird and stood on a branch. He was right next to List. List, are you here to inspect the flock of blazing birds? Yes, Infant. I'm here to pick a few red birds for my knight to ride. Oh, they look very weak. Little Red said that it could fight 100 of them. Infant turned his head and looked at the 26 human knights standing on the ground. Little Red also cried out in agreement. Screech! List patted Infant's head. They are still young. There is still room for improvement. Boring. I'm going to train. I will become a powerful knight. List, you can send me to join the war. Go train well. After sending Infant away, List sent the 26th knight to tame the red birds. Your Majesty, can we really tame Advanced World of Warcraft? A knight asked with uncertainty. Advanced World of Warcraft gave them too much pressure. A normal elite Earth knight could only fight against a low-level World of Warcraft. Most of the kingdom's knight are still capturing low-level World of Warcraft. As a knight, it is indeed difficult for you to tame an advanced World of Warcraft. However, I believe in your future. I will allow you to be protected by my glory. Go, these red birds will bow down to you. With the power of awe of the Phoenix, List naturally had a way to make the red birds sign a beast-taming contract with the knight. However, the beast-taming contract was not a binding contract. He cautiously added, I can let you sign a contract with the red birds. However, if you want to gain the approval of the red birds, you will need to work hard. Once the red birds break free from the contract, you will lose the right to receive orders of chivalry. The knight was stunned. Losing the right to receive orders of chivalry was equivalent to losing List's trust. This was more nerve-wracking than losing an advanced World of Warcraft mount. My condition has been really bad recently. I'm sorry, everyone. Please remember this book's domain name. 9 Heavens Godly Emperor Mobile Version. Chapter 1053. The Orders of Chivalry Cardinal Squad had been formed. 26 Fire Elite Earth Knights had all signed a taming contract with the Cardinal with the help of List. The Cardinal Squad would be the first batch of knight to protect the Fire Kingdom. Of course, they were only in reserve. They had to wait for the Cardinal to establish a close relationship with them and not rebel before the real Cardinal Squad could be determined. No matter what, this batch of knight would be the backbone of the Burning Legion in the future and would be the direct knight of the Flame family. The Fire Kingdom that they guarded had not been completely built, but the main framework had been formed. In such a fantasy world full of magic, the construction industry was not developed enough, but as long as one was willing to spend resources and mobilize mages to participate in the construction. The speed, quality, and difficulty of construction were definitely more efficient than the high-tech construction methods on Earth. It just so happened that the Moonkill natives on Flame Island relied on magic dust to cultivate a large number of ancient mages. They participated in the construction and took on the most difficult parts, so that the city was built quickly. Moreover, there was the Guild of Magic coordinating and developing more construction techniques. The Fire Kingdom was the highest platform to test the construction standards of the Fire Kingdom, and it was planned as a whole. Most of the cities under the Knight system were built spontaneously, without a complete city plan. The Fire Kingdom was planned to be a large city with a population of 500,000 from the beginning, with streets and blocks arranged in a radial pattern. In the center was the landmark of the city, a huge stone gate, the Arc de Triomphe. This was List's bad taste, imitating Paris. An avenue that ran from the north to the south passed through the Arc de Triomphe. This avenue was called the Gilt Avenue. It could carry 10 carriages side by side, which was the distance of 20 warhorses. In addition to this Gilt Avenue, there were 5 other avenues that crossed the Arc de Triomphe. Of course, because of the direction of the Arc de Triomphe, these roads could only go around the Arc de Triomphe, forming a big turntable around it. Only the Gilt Avenue could pass through the Arc de Triomphe unimpeded. The 5 avenues and the Gilt Avenue divided the Fire Kingdom into 12 radial fan-shaped areas. In a clockwise direction. The area from 12 o'clock to 1 o'clock was the administrative area, the area from 1 o'clock to 2 o'clock was the education area, and the area from 2 o'clock to 3 o'clock was the green area. The area from 3 o'clock to 4 o'clock was the business district, the area from 4 o'clock to 5 o'clock was the civilian residential area, and the area from 5 o'clock to 6 o'clock was the business district. The area from 6 to 7 o'clock was the civilian residential area, the area from 7 to 8 o'clock was the storage area, and the area from 8 to 9 o'clock was the magic area. The area from 9 to 10 o'clock was the green area, the area from 10 to 11 o'clock was the noble residential area, and the area from 11 to 12 o'clock was the military area. Of course, this was only a rough distribution. Every fan-shaped area was divided by countless streets, which were further subdivided into many smaller areas. List, who had a great pursuit of greenery, requested that every small area should have a park, and every small street should have an eye-catching public toilet. In short, the future Fire King city would be a clean and tidy city with lush greenery. The cities of other countries would always be accompanied by a large amount of feces, sewage, and other dirty things. Only in the Fire King city, he would not allow such uncivilized phenomena to exist. In fact, even if there was no government to clean up the feces, the civilians would still rob it clean. Feces could help crops grow, this was already common knowledge among the Fire King's citizens. Compared to the extravagant elves that only the nobles had the qualifications to use, feces could be produced by both humans and animals, and it could help all kinds of crops. There were many small peddlers who specialized in selling feces, transporting feces from the city to the major plantations, causing the phenomenon of people defecating in the wild to disappear. The civilians would keep their feces to sell for money. The nobles would buy feces at a high price to farm. But there was a problem, and that was that transporting feces from the city would inevitably pollute the air. Liszt requested that the Fire King's city build underground tunnels that were very wide, and could allow carriages to run in them. The feces would be transported out of the city through the underground tunnels. At this moment, after returning from the Phoenix Parasol Forest with the Red Sparrow Squad, Liszt stayed in the Fire King's city to inspect. Today, he was inspecting the sewers. At this moment, there were not many people living in the Fire King's city, so the sewers had not started transporting feces and sewage. Light is a very big problem. The underground tunnels are very deep, and this is a place where light cannot reach. It is very easy to breed evil here, Liszt said to Gort and the others who followed him. Gort was specially sent by him to supervise the construction of the Fire King's city. The former fallen Lord Knight was now a Viscount, and one of the development committee members. Your Majesty, when the Fire King's city is in operation, I will order the King's administration to form a special patrol orders of chivalry to protect the safety of the underground tunnels, and not let any filth survive here. Gort said with a powerful voice. Following Liszt's continuous rise in status, he had already adapted to his current status. Although his strength was still a pitiful trainee knight, as Liszt's representative, he would not belittle himself. Patrol is a must. After all, other than transporting feces, sewage, and garbage, the underground tunnels also exist as an emergency passageway and a channel for supplies. However, if the light problem is not solved, it will always be a hidden danger. Has the Guild of Magic not come to fruition yet? I am not sure about this. The management of the Guild of Magic is not under my jurisdiction. The two presidents, Crazy and Kenley, should know. Your Majesty, do you need to contact them? The members of the development committee had their own responsibilities, and would not cross the line easily. Chairman Lee William Tulip was in charge of overall planning, Deputy Chairman D. Maria Iwashi was in charge of diplomacy, Emily was in charge of military affairs, Piero Grayiron was in charge of trade, Elton Golden Chrysanthemum was in charge of agriculture, Geoffrey Furonqui was in charge of justice, Durut Red Apricot was in charge of communications, and Paris was in charge of finance. Gort Mast was in charge of the city construction, Marcus Will was in charge of education. Of the two special members, Crazy Truth was in charge of the Guild of Magic and the various departments of the Fire Kingdom, and Kenley Truth was in charge of the Guild of Magic's scientific research. Contact them, Liszt said. Soon, Gort instructed his assistant to contact Crazy and Kenley through the magic platform. Liszt asked directly, how's the progress of the magic light bulb that I asked the Guild of Magic to develop? Your Majesty, there are preliminary results. The problem of magical luminescence has been solved, but glass products cannot replace crystal, so magic cannot be used stably. We have not found a material that can replace crystal, so we have not developed the magic light bulb that Your Majesty hopes for. The magic light bulb, as the name suggested, was made using magic light bulbs. There should be a physical phenomenon of magnetism producing electricity in this world, but Liszt did not understand it and could not develop it in depth. After all, he had not even figured out the steam engine. So he decided to avoid electricity and directly use magic to achieve some advanced technology. The magic light bulb was one of the ideas. There was already a magic equipment like crystal lamps, so it was only a matter of cheap mass production of crystal lamps. Once the magic light bulb was developed, the city could be brightly lit at night, which would greatly increase the working time. In the past, most people would obediently go to bed at night, but with the magic light bulb, they could at least work until midnight, which would definitely greatly improve the efficiency of work. Liszt could not help but urge Crazy and Kenley, hurry up and break the shackles of thinking. Look for more materials. We have even solved the problem of magical luminescence, so it's not difficult to find a suitable carrier. Tell those arcanists, whoever can find the suitable materials, I will sponsor them to set up their own magic laboratory. Chapter 1054. The association of mages grew larger and larger. However, Liszt, who was always on guard against the revival of sorcerers, had gradually changed the concept of a magic. The current association of mages was more like the Chinese Academy of Sciences. Sorcerers gradually adapted to the identity of arcanists and engaged in professional magic development work. Gradually, under the influence of Liszt, arcanists began to specialize in different fields according to their interests and specialties. For example, medical arcanists, magic equipment arcanists, magic array arcanists, potion arcanists, machinery arcanists, and so on. However, the Chinese Academy of Sciences was an elite organization of scientists, while the Association of Mages was an organization of all sorcerers. It could be seen as a combination of the Chinese Academy of Sciences and the Ministry of Science and Technology, and also included functions such as Health Committee, integration of production, study, and research, research and development of magic technology, education and training of arcanists, and finally use arcanists and magic technology to participate in the construction of the kingdom. At the same time, the Association of Mages adopted the Chief Arcanist system. This was a magic management system, mainly to set up the position of Chief Arcanist in magic research projects and national institutions. The Chief Arcanist would be responsible for the project, managing the project's funds, resources, and so on. Because of the need for magic light bulbs, Liszt decided to take out an excessive reward and sponsor an arcanist to set up an independent magic laboratory, which was equivalent to promoting the arcanist to Chief Arcanist. In the field of magic, this was definitely a step to the sky, becoming a boss-level figure in the industry. One had to know that there were so many registered sorcerers in the Association of Mages, but no more than 20 had the position of Chief Arcanist and had their own independent laboratory. Most of the sorcerers were only assigned to do odd jobs in the laboratory, or to participate in the construction of the administrative offices in various cities. The Association of Mages had set up more than 50 magic laboratories to carry out various research projects, but most of the laboratories were under the names of a Chi and Laird. Only magic shooters were qualified to continuously open magic laboratories and create all kinds of new research projects. Your Majesty, with such a tempting reward, I'm afraid most of the arcanists in the Association of Mages will not be in the mood to do their own work for a period of time. They will all be focused on finding carriers for magic light bulbs, Chris responded a little helplessly. She was too familiar with the young dragon knight, His Majesty the King of Fire. Sometimes, she could feel his far-sighted strategic planning, which led to the establishment of the Magic Association. Sometimes, she could also feel that his ideas were simply unconstrained and untraceable. In other words, he could do whatever he wanted. But no matter what, Chris would faithfully execute Liszt's orders. She had long decided to serve Liszt with all her might for the rest of her life. Not only was he returning the favor of saving his life, but he was also dedicating himself to the truth. Liszt smiled. That's for the best. Only then can the importance of the magic light bulb be demonstrated. I'm just curious, Your Majesty. Is the magic light bulb really that important? We have crystal lamps. Even though they're expensive, the crystal Cyathea forest can provide us with large amounts of crystals. The light emerald dragon Ethan can also produce large amounts of crystals. With the cultivation of the crystal Cyathea forest, crystals were no longer a scarce commodity, and crystal lamps could be mass-produced. You don't understand. Crystal lamps are too limited to the use of nobles and mages. They can't conquer the darkness. Only by developing cheap magic light bulbs can we conquer the darkness to the greatest extent. Liszt explained casually. But after thinking about it carefully, it did not seem to make much sense. Edison invented the light bulb, which was an application of electricity. It announced the advent of the electrical age and the beginning of the Second Industrial Revolution. But the current magic light bulb, apart from increasing labor efficiency and enriching nightlife, seemed to have nothing to do with the Industrial Revolution. Of course. Whether it was meaningful or not, Liszt wanted to create the magic light bulb. Originally, he thought that to find a suitable carrier for the magic light bulb, he would have to try and fail more than 1,000 times, just like Edison's invention of the light bulb. But Liszt did not expect that less than 3 days after the reward was issued, a mage would announce that he had found the carrier material for the magic light bulb. Hence, in the Mage Tower of Fireforge City, Liszt met this mage. The young mage was called Orvis Truth. He had just advanced from a mage apprentice to a mage. His arcanist identity was a magic equipment arcanist, and his main research direction was the creation of magic equipment. Your Majesty, this is the most suitable carrier for the magic light bulb. The young Orvis excitedly took out a bright light bulb. The light bulb was round, which was Liszt's idea. But there was an additional calabash at the bottom of the light bulb. It was an ordinary calabash, a common climbing plant in the primeval forest of the Fire Kingdom. It was similar to the calabashes on Earth. The light bulb was inserted into the mouth of the calabash, flashing with an unstable bluish-white light. Calabash? Yes, the most common calabashes in the calabash plantation. I used the calabashes to store some special magic potions. Then, I suddenly thought, why not use the calabash to inject magic power into it, so that the magic light bulb can continuously maintain the required magic power. Thinking of this, he began to try. At first, he did not have high hopes. After all, the calabash was just an ordinary plant, not something with magic power. But unexpectedly, after he injected magic power into it, he found that the magic power did not dissipate. Thus, the calabash magic light bulb was born. Using the eye of magic, Liszt could naturally see through this calabash magic light bulb. It was filled with water magic power. It was flowing slowly inside the calabash, providing magic power for the illuminating magic array in the glass bulb at the top. The consumption was very small, and with the magic power of this calabash, it could be used for at least a year. Very good. Liszt patted Orvis on the shoulder and was not stingy with his praise. You are a lucky arcanist. Of course, luck is also a part of strength. I have high hopes for you, Orvis. From today onwards, I will sponsor you to set up an independent magic laboratory of your own. Thank you, Your Majesty, thank you so much. Orvis trembled with excitement and bowed deeply to Liszt. This is a reward that you deserve. Liszt turned around and said to Chris, Kenley, and the others who followed him, I think we can let Orvis be on the cover of the next issue of The Great Arcanist. The Association of Mages should vigorously support outstanding young arcanists. The Great Arcanist was the most authoritative journal of the Association of Mages. Countless magicians were proud to be on the cover. Chris readily agreed. Of course, this is very good material. As long as Orvis is willing to accept the interview, he will be on the cover of the next issue of The Great Arcanist. How could Orvis not be willing? He nodded hurriedly. I am willing, Mr. President, I am very willing to accept the interview. Then it's settled. After sending away the smug Orvis, Liszt summoned Chris and Kenley to his office. He held 2 small calabashes in his hands and said solemnly, Do you realize the value of this calabash? You're tuning into the Xiaofan's Wuxia Tales YouTube channel. Don't forget to subscribe and join us on this journey to catch the most captivating stories.